Okay, the time is 6:31 p.m. We're going to call our meeting to order. Okay, Miss Evie Anderson will do roll call. Thank you, Evie.
Councilman Jonathan Blake. Here. Councilman Mike Jack.
Here.
Councilman Simeon White.
Here.
Councilman Terry Fowler.
Here.
Councilman Tom Anderson.
Here.
And Mayor Tara Sanker.
Here. Okay, quorum is confirmed. Okay, I've asked Citizen Louis Cernock to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the American flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for the area that I live in today, for the things that it means to me and to the other people here. And Lord, I just pray that the things that happen here tonight, that they're your will. And Lord, that we just voice our opinion, but Lord, you have control over all things that happen here tonight. And Lord, just help each one of us to in the ways that you know we need you in our own lives. And Lord, just bless all the things that go on here tonight. In Jesus' name I ask these things. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Louis. Okay. Okay, so we have items of community interest. The video uploading will be delayed. Most likely, we have the person who does that is on vacation out of the country. We will have audio that will be uploaded in a day or two. We want to big thanks, shout out to Bob Bowles for retrofitting audio equipment into a donated cabinet by Activists of Addison, Texas. They were downsizing, and they have a manager who lives here in Poetry, so we benefited from some of that. They donated furniture to us and the school. Shout out to Corrine Hansen and Lisa Ray Hiragoen for cleaning the town hall. Thanks to Councilmember Tom Anderson and his grandnephew for installing accessories in the bathrooms and working several days on several projects for town hall. Thanks to Sherry Vinson for typing the minutes. She's been awesome at that. And we want to give a shout out to Jacob Ross for giving the town a great price reduction on the ADA ramp and rails. He was trying to meet our prescribed budget, so we're very grateful to him for that. The town is soliciting for any grant writers available. Please email that at contact@poetrytexas.org. The town is also looking for volunteers to move furniture to the town hall Friday, August 25th. We'll begin at 7 a.m. to try and beat the heat. We need those who are strong, but also those who can help clean. We might have other little projects like spraying weeds and different things as well. You can email to mayor.tara@poetrytexas.org if you're able to help with that. Anything is appreciated. If you live in Kaufman County, we want to hear from citizens. Anyone who believes that they were adversely affected by the property ID split out in Kaufman County, please email with factual information in Kaufman County to such mayor.tara@poetrytexas.org. To solve any of these problems, we need factual information about any hardships this may have caused. Coy Johnson, the deputy appraiser of Kaufman County, has said it does not affect your property values as they group them together in what is called an economic unit when evaluating values. He said it doesn't affect one's homestead or agriculture exemptions. Okay, moving on to G under reports. Our financial July end, we had a beginning bank balance of $43,163.54, an ending balance of $51,156.04. We had deposit totals of $17,515.16 and withdrawals and debits of $3,119.82, and then checks paid of $64,402.84. A lot of the expenditures this month were of course, on the town hall site. We're trying to wrap that up, and so we've been going hard and heavy on that. We also, Teresa and I also fine-tuned the quarterly 3 update, so the budget versus actual. When posting, it's kind of, it's all new. So we are posting things like the donations. We kind of had to figure out, okay, so where do these go? How do we address it appropriately? So as you can see, we put it under 4,500 donations, and then we itemized, okay? So if someone said, hey, I want this donation to go specifically for, the septic or specifically for the ADA bathroom, then it was itemized in that way so that we're responsible to follow through with the donation and the wish for that money. So those are all listed there. So then when you look under the 60/30, the capital expenditure building improvement, our budget was $15,000. We've had about $52.25 in donations, so that's a total of $20,225. As of the time this packet had to be posted, we had $792 left. I think since then we've spent $350 on the striping, so we have, a little bit of a few $100s left. So it's going fine on that front. We did tweak a little bit on the newspaper. I noticed on the newspaper publications there was a tweak on that. So we did go over our anticipated budget on that, and next month when we do the new budget, we'll have to address that appropriately. Okay, as requested, we have another report that is dealing with the sales and use tax revenue. So it is a new ordinance for our town. We just started receiving funds. Officially, they had said May or June, but we did get a small portion in May. So on this report, in May, it showed $392.28 of revenue. In June, it was $6,432.63. In July, it was $8,529.55. That's a total allocation of $15,354.46. So we are now at our anticipated budget for the year for sales and use tax revenues. We should be receiving for August, I think tomorrow, because tomorrow is the second Friday of the month. We should be receiving that. I don't have any information yet, so tomorrow we should know. And I think that'll be important information for when next month when we start trying to project for the next fiscal year. Okay, moving on to the reports. We have the Secretary's report. Deputy City Secretary Teresa Scholander prepared the report. It'll be read by Evie Anderson.
Okay. This report is on current items that we have been working on from the time of the last report on July 18th, 2023. Proposed Town Hall move-in date announcement upcoming. I have to admit, I am looking forward to this move-in date. The move will definitely help my organizational efforts. Due to my surgeries, volunteers will be needed since I am limited in my ability. I, being Teresa, continue to reach out to all FEC reimbursement property owners who have yet to cash their reimbursement checks. Please note, auditors most likely will void all checks uncleared when audit complete for year ending September 30th, 2023. If you have not cashed your check, please do so immediately. And I'll just add, if you know someone that might meet that criteria, please ask them to cash the check. Thank you. Okay, this past month, Town Office collected final campaign reports and associated forms from each of last year's May election candidates. Thank you, candidates, for turning these reports in a timely manner. SPACs. One SPAC turned in their final dissolution report, and one SPAC has yet to do so. That report is past due now. A day in the life. Town Hall office is open Thursday afternoons. All week's business from 5 p.m. Thursday to opening the following Thursday is completed prior to office closing. All accounting, unread emails, daily tasks, PIRs are received and acknowledged, and or any issues that need addressed. And Teresa says to have a safe and wonderful Texas August. Enjoy your Poetry Texas summer, aren't we all?
Thank you, Evie.
Can we discuss this report?
There really is no discussion on a report, I don't think.
Well, I mean, we asked for this report, so I'm curious why we're discussing final campaign reports and SPACs with the public.
That is a duty of the city secretary to make sure that those are filed appropriately.
It's a duty, but it's not our responsibility to report this to the public.
Well, I've asked her to report on things that are in her purview, and that's one of them. That's what you guys asked for.
No, I disagree. SPACs are a special political action committee. We set the guidelines that they have to follow, and those guidelines are set by the State Ethics Commission. So this doesn't have anything to do with letting the citizens know that there's a SPAC that still hasn't been dissolved.
We've had plenty of citizens who, in the Meet the Candidate night, that was very clear. They wanted to know that.
And they have the right to fill out a PIR. This is not a public forum to air dirty laundry.
Well, I think the most important point is that any report should be directed to us for our information.
That's
the
right.
Public nature of this meeting is for the sake
100%.
of the citizens viewing our discussion, not so much us reporting to the citizens. So do we have a duty as it relates to SPACs? Because if we do, it might be important for us to know that, but if not, if it has nothing to do with us, then
The this is from the city secretary. She has different duties than the mayor has. The city secretary's one of her duties is to make sure to file all the make sure all the reports are in, and this is one of her things that she put on here. So I'm going to back
She
her on.
said it was suggested by you to put this on there.
What I suggested to her was that when she first started, she was doing things that were in my purview as mayor. So I've suggested, what are the unique things? I posed that question with her. So what are the unique things that you as city secretary are in charge of? And this is what she came up with.
I would just say in the future, let's refrain from airing dirty laundry to the public and to.
No names were mentioned.
There's
Terry.
only 2 SPACs, and it's been
Well,
regardless.
So you think you should hide that from the public?
Yeah, they have the right for a public information request. It's not our job to go hang the laundry outside. And to Simeon's point, this is for the council. This could be emailed to the council. This doesn't have to be read in public. This was out of a concern from Mike Jaffe saying, well, what are you working on, Teresa? Can we help you with something? This is not to inform our citizens what our hired employee is doing.
So you want the citizens to be in dark about this?
No, don't twist this, Tar. Let's get this really clear. That's exactly right. They can file a public information request on my campaign report, Tom Anderson's, yours, anybody's up here.
Again, there's been no mention of any names.
Regardless, let's stay above board and not put this stuff out there.
Okay, so, I think that actually the public is is entitled to be aware of what's
Okay,
going on with their
what actions are
candidates.
we gonna take as a council on this?
This is a memo,
SBAC?
Terry, and you're the one that's getting all upset about
What
it.
are we gonna do about it? Now that we've been informed that they
You know
haven't.
what, and you contacting the city secretary is kind of out of line.
No, it is not. I'm asking her what,
It
why
is.
this, no, it is not. She does not work for you. She is the city secretary.
Okay, so crossing the boundary of, that's something that I think Attorney Berman could handle. So I'm going to pose
By
a
all means,
pin.
by all means.
Because
You're,
she can't have 6 bosses.
I didn't
That's
tell her
not
what to do. I asked her
appropriate.
why it's on there, Tara.
Okay, so she came up with this, okay, and I said it's fine.
Because you
There are-
suggested it be on here.
You know, I don't think it's very fair to citizens that might have been interested in this if we didn't put it on the agenda to discuss, because some people might have come if
This
we're
is
going to
meant-
discuss the secretary's duties, and this is just a report.
It is a report.
To council and to Mayor Sankovich.
It is
Right.
report
Not
to
to
be
city.
stowed. Okay, so you know what? I have a problem with you trying to hide this actually from the citizens.
What are we hiding, Tara?
I don't know. I'm just putting it out
Are we
there.
gonna put everything we have that is public information out there for them to look at, or are we gonna make them
Well,
request it?
here is Attorney Berman. Let's ask him.
What a welcome, what a welcome.
Attorney Berman. We're so sorry you got caught in traffic.
It started off hot, yeah.
So we have the city secretary's memo, and Terry's raised the question and concern. The memo states that she has a number of things on here, and the council did request that the city secretary be able to post some of the things that's going on with her. And one of the things that she's in charge of is collecting the campaign finance reports and all of that. So let me read to you what she has said. Okay, this past month, town office collected final campaign reports and associated forms from each of last year's May election candidates. Thank you, candidates, for turning these reports in a timely manner. SPACs. One SPAC turned in their final dissolution report, and one SPAC has yet to do so. That report is past due now. So Mr. Councilmember Fowler thinks that's inappropriate. What is your take on that, sir?
Well, I'm not quite sure what's inappropriate about it. I think the information is public information. People have an obligation to maintain.
So you see who the report's addressed to?
I'm sorry?
Do you see who the report's addressed to?
Do we need to get a mic on him?
Yeah, I'll come up with the mic.
Okay.
So this is a request by council for the secretary to fill us in on what she's doing, and
And it's been requested for her to read it at the meeting, and Evie's been gracious to read it at the meetings,
so
and that's.
this was asked to be sent to council, just for a heads up. So this is addressed to the mayor and council members. I don't think it's our job to put this into the public's eye of if someone has or hasn't. They have the right for a PIR if they think a SPAC is not dissolved appropriately or legally.
Sure they do.
But it's not our job. It's not best practices to go out and air dirty laundry.
What you're suggesting is that we shouldn't be proactive in providing the information publicly. You can't.
No, see, that's kind of twisting it too, because I'm
No.
all for public information and what we know that we can put out. But those, I mean, Texas Ethics Committee's not posting something saying who's late.
Exactly. You don't have to do this.
Don't need to do it. It's not best practices.
It's not required.
Let's let Mr. Berman speak.
Well, it's not
I'll pose the
required.
question.
You can if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to. I gotta say, I'm not familiar with any city that's actually posted the financial reports online or presented them publicly. And it can be done. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's public information. You don't have to if you don't want to, though. It's an operational choice, though. That it's not a legal question. It's really
It's
an
not a legal
operational.
question.
So it's
best
an
practice.
operational choice. It was my choice to back our city secretary on this, and so I have the purview to do that, do I not?
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Sure
Yeah,
you do.
and I didn't say you didn't.
And
but the
he was
city
questioning the city
said-
secretary
No,
in
no.
that effort.
I asked the city secretary how this came up. She said it was suggested by Tara to be put
Well,
on.
I suggested that she do things that are exclusively for the city secretary to do, and this is what she came up with.
You can if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to.
Okay.
Just hold down the button.
Is the light on?
Yeah, it's on now.
Sorry. Does the city secretary and the assistant city secretary have a list of duties and guidelines that tell them what this so that we don't run into, and I know you have the right to ask her to do things, but do they have some kind of guideline that's written down so that they don't have to come to you every time something that they're reporting on that they did during their week, which is what I think I didn't, but you asked her to do, this was something she did during the week.
And it just takes a lot of her time. And
Yeah.
so that's one reason she's reporting on things that take her time.
Okay.
The
But
citizens at large are paying for that.
Yeah, but is there some kind of guidelines that she,
Yes.
job description that?
Yes, we have a detailed job description.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Okay, town hall progress, moving on. Town hall progress report. Tom, do you want to go ahead and talk about that?
Well, I guess one of the things, probably most important, is we got the third air conditioner installed.
Woohoo.
So it's a little cooler in there for working. Also, we have an inspection coming up. The same company that did it for a year and a half ago was East Texas Home Inspection. Scott Kelly, they're out of Palestine. Same price, and they're coming back September 8th to do the inspection well before we move in. I guess also the closet walls, we had a lot of painting work done this week in addition to the work on the ramp and the stripes for the handicap stripes on the concrete. So I guess in my view, it looks like we're basically ready to move in. We've got all the critical things done. The rest is mainly clean up and move furniture in as far as I can see. Tara, do you have any other things?
So Michael Whitfield is the welder who lives in Poetry, who has volunteered. He volunteered a while back to put the loop on. The new ADA requirement for the rails is that there's a loop at the end of each ramp and rail, and it's just a loop. He had said he would do that. The problem is that his school shop is not completed yet, so it's tying him up on that. So if there's a welder among us who wants to volunteer to do that, we might need that. So because he would like to, but he doesn't have a shop right now. And he's a teacher at Wiley High School, and their shop has been renovated, and it's not completed yet. So that is one of the things. Of course, even with the ADA, when we've looked at different municipalities that maybe have, been in violation or whatever, they had like 2 and 3 years to remedy those. And there was actually, I think, Tom, what was the city you said that they had?
Wills Point.
Wills Point.
Yeah, was out of compliance, and the ruling was that they had 2 years to cure. So I talked to the city secretary in Wills Point about that, and she said, in 2 years they got whatever it was that they were asked to do, they got it taken care of.
So anticipate that, Michael had said that he wanted his classroom to kind of participate in that if they could, because it would be really a good educational experience. But he's frustrated, of course, that the shop is not completed yet. So the timing of that may not happen right. The move, like I said, we're going to be moving furniture in. We hope on Friday, the 25th, and we hope the next meeting will be in the new facility. So
I should have mentioned, the Secretary of Wills Point said they were not fined. They were only told they had 2 years to get the deficiencies cured, which they did.
So we have, like I said, we have the ADA bathroom, the other bathroom. We have of course, the fire extinguishers. We have the important things are there. There's a few little things that need to be finished up, but we'll see what the inspector says. And we have that inspection already scheduled, so. And Teresa had texted, Deputy Secretary Teresa texted me. She said, she really looks forward to having better air conditioning, because the little makeshift office, when it's 105 out, it doesn't have its own vent, so it does get warm in there. And she's like really looking forward to the move. She said, make sure that you say that. I'm like, okay.
And the third air conditioners in her
And the
office.
third air conditioners in her office. Yes, that should help. All right. So, moving on to the consent agenda. We have the minutes from July 18th, 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jaffe, seconded by Councilmember Blake. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, consent agenda item 2, pay the June legal bill of $1,218.75 from Nichols, Jackson, Dillard, Hager, and Smith.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by White, seconded by Anderson. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay. Pay the remainder of the Hunt County final election. So I did pay them a $500 deposit. They said it would greatly help them if we did that for their audit or something. So we paid them the $500, and so the remainder is $2667.90. So, which is less than what they charged us last year. And I'm not. There's all different things that go into the cost, and they divide it among us, all of the entities.
Make a motion to approve it. The 2667.90.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Anderson, second by Blake, to approve the $2667.90 leftover or payment that is left from the Hunt County final election bill. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. All right, number 4. Pay the annual license fee from Hunt County for the voting equipment. It's $500. So that was $13,500 divided by 27 entities, which makes our bill $500.
Make a motion, we approve it, the $500.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Anderson, second by Councilmember White. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Moving on to the regular agenda. Okay, discuss and take action on the zero zoning or revised ordinance proposed. Okay, so I think last time we discussed, Councilmember White had worked long and hard with a lot of the data and information the research committee had come up with. We're very grateful to them for their work on that. And then, of course, we sent it to Attorney Berman, and then he put his take on it, and it is very different. So we thought we would bring it to the table again, certainly to discuss it again, and it'll be we'll be discussing this for quite some time, I'm sure. So no rush on this. We want to get it right. So I would personally like to propose that maybe we it is zoning. Zoning is one of the tools that we can use to keep high-density housing at bay. But I understand the zero zoning. It has a kind of a nice sound to it. But I would like to maybe propose that we call minimal zoning, because that's really in essence what it is. It is a minimal zoning. As Attorney Berman had said, it is one of the most minimal zoning ordinances he's ever seen. So I think with that, I don't want it to be deceptive in any way. I just think minimal. The zero zoning is catchy. I have to say it's very catchy. But I just personally would like to see it called minimal. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say something about the zero. I mean, I get it, but it's like sarcasm, out of context, it doesn't make sense. So I would just say call it zoning ordinance or something. I mean, I don't think we need any words in front of it. We're not trying to brag. It is our zoning ordinance, and it'll have a date on it, and it'll forever be the first one that we pass. So I would be in favor of just making the name just kind of consistent with what everybody else would call it.
I kind of like the minimal idea. I mean, I'm not married to the zero zoning, but I think that it should have, I like the idea of it having a call to action in it, and also kind of an accountability. Like the name of the document is setting a precedence for the rest of the document. Minimal, that's better. That explains that we're not after some huge document, and it might be a witness to future councils of this ordinance's intentions.
It's not 50 or 100 pages. It's going to probably be 18 to 20. So it is fairly minimal.
think that's a perspective. When some would really like 0 and some may like more, I agree with Mike. I think zoning ordinance would be the way to go.
Okay, I might mention on page 2, had kind of a question, and this is for you, Attorney Berman. This is your document or your revision to on section 1.2.7. It says facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewers, schools, parks, and other public requirements. Since we don't have a public sewer system, do we reword that? Or?
No, this language is pretty much a reprint of what state law says. We're just
Oh,
simply
okay.
reiterating what state law already says.
Okay.
Today, we don't have sewage, but, who knows, in 15, 20 years, there may be something.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
just out there.
Okay.
Mr. Berman, I have a question on 1.3. Where it says, "The provisions of ordinance shall apply to all land, buildings, structures, and uses therein located within the town of Poetry and its extraterritorial jurisdiction, unless an exemption is provided by the terms of the ordinance as otherwise exemplified by law." Is that appropriate that we can have zoning for the ETJ?
We don't. The except is otherwise exempted by state law. The ETJ regulations, Chapter 42 of the Local Government Code, Chapter 42 and 43, we really don't have very much authority at all. Zoning regulations can't be imposed in our ETJ, but we can impose sign regulations, and lots of zoning ordinances, comprehensive zoning ordinances, will also contain sign regulations. So to the extent that you regulate something that might be authorized to be regulated in the ETJ, then you would be able to do that. Ordinarily, there really is very little you can do in the ETJ, almost nothing. Some minimal nuisance regulations if you wanted to, and sign regulations probably most importantly. But you can't impose zoning regulations in the ETJ.
Well, I guess, and that's my question, and maybe obvious, but it's not obvious to me. Why do you say extraterritorial jurisdiction? And also in 1.4, it also says, and its extraterritorial jurisdiction. Why even say that?
Well, maybe one day the legislature will change its mind, and we won't have to change our ordinances. We want the ordinance, this ordinance deals with land use regulations. The purpose of this ordinance is to preserve the rural character of the town, to keep things as they are, and to give the town council the ability to approve or disapprove projects and developments that are not favorable. You want these regulations to extend as far as you can, to the fullest extent allowed by law. These provisions really are trying to cover areas outside of town, including the ETJ, if and to the extent that we can regulate stuff in our ETJ. I'm telling you, we can't regulate very much at all, but you don't want to foreclose the opportunity if one day you get it. That makes sense? I mean, you want it out
Yeah,
there.
makes sense.
Yeah, okay, I guess I understand it's more or less, in presenting it to the public, it sounds like we're saying we're regulating ETJ, even though you're saying we're really not.
All we're really doing is if we have sign regulations in our zoning ordinance, we'll extend them to our ETJ, but that's about it. That is all that the law allows us to do.
Okay.
So nuisance ordinances, noises, smells.
There are some nuisance regulations that we can extend into our ETJ.
Because
And-
citizen, Louis Cernock spoke last week about a pig farm that used to be out here.
Yeah.
And if someone want to start another one behind our town lines into the ETJ, that smell would still be a nuisance of those inside the city limits.
Yes, it would. That's not a zoning ordinance, though. That is a nuisance
Nuisance
regulation.
ordinance.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a zoning ordinance to be able to enforce a nuisance ordinance?
Nope. You have to have a nuisance ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Other questions?
Yes, several.
Yeah, I knew there was going to be. That's why I didn't want to sit down, save myself the
for
energy.
sure. One of the biggest ones, and I think really the biggest one, and it pops up all throughout this document, in SF and SFE, I'm just going to look at, in section 2, talks about SFE and SF, and it says, density of this district is limited to one residential dwelling and that pops up throughout the document. We have some citizens that have like a mother-in-law home on their property, or even multiple homes, like not to mention any names, but a former councilman, I think, has 2 or 3 houses, and I think that's fine because it's family members. Is this ordinance right now going to restrict pretty much across the board multiple homes?
For those that are currently non-conforming, for those that violate the terms of these regulations, they are lawful non-conforming uses. They will be allowed to continue state law, case law, and this ordinance will allow those pre-existing uses to continue until they're abandoned. And there are some descriptions about how uses are abandoned and how non-conforming uses are terminated. But going forward, it would not be allowed unless someone were to ask for a variance with the Board of Adjustment, and you guys, the council, would be the Board of Adjustment. And even then, the council's discretion would be limited to what an unnecessary hardship might be. And the unnecessary hardship is not something that is unique to the property owner, it's something that's unique to the property. So, yeah, I've had this situation in other cities before. A 10-acre tract with a request by the residents, the owner, to reserve 1 acre in the corner for their mother-in-law, elderly couple or elderly woman who was in her last years. The only way to get around that is you rezone the property to something else, or you seek a variance. And something like that is unique. The hardship is unique to the property owner, not to the property itself. And so you, under these regulations, going forward, new uses would not be allowed.
So 2 questions on that for clarification so we can get the options. A, can we strike that if we wanted to say you could build multiple family, multiple dwellings on a single property? And B, could we put a restriction on it to say you can put an additional house for every 2 acres, which I know the reasonable thing to do would be to plat that property and then just split it up, but people don't want to do that. So just so we know our options.
All right, so understand that one of the goals here is to impose regulations that would give the council the authority to restrict or prohibit multifamily use,
Right.
or dense residential. So what you're suggesting there would be changing the terms of this ordinance that would effectively allow more dense residential as a matter of right, eliminating any discretion on the part of the council. It's really, really hard to carve out, I understand the concern. You want people that have large lots, you want to enable them to have an extra home or 2 on their lot for family members. But understand that those people that live there today won't be living there, or may not be living there 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Right.
But those homes will still be there. And what you're really talking about there is dense residential that this ordinance is specifically trying to avoid. So the only way to allow something like that would be to carve out an unnecessary hardship variance, which is allowed by state law, or to change the regulations as they apply to everybody in town. That makes sense? I mean, it's really, really hard to carve out, I kind of like this couple or this family, I wish they could do it kind of thing. You really can't do that in adopting a regulation. It has to apply to everybody, not just the people that are here now, but the people that will be here 10, 20 years from now.
So can we do the no more than 1 dwelling per 2 acres so that somebody that had, 5 acres could put 2 houses, but they didn't have to plat their land, more or less?
You can change it so that you can have 2 primary dwellings on a 2-acre or larger lot. You can do that.
Okay, so we could potentially then for SFE, which is, 5, what do we have?
Single-family estate.
Right.
Lot
That
sizes of
one's-
2 acres.
So maybe for AR, the 5+, we could allow them to do a dwelling for every 2 acres? Would that
Sure.
be a possibility? And
You could do
that pretty
that.
much keeps our density what we're wanting anyways?
Sure you can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
I think what I hear in Simeon's request is we want to be really good to our citizens, and yet how the balance of it is how do we balance that? How do we maintain being good to our citizens and yet protect ourselves at the same time? It is a struggle. It is a balance.
It's a difficult balance. Yeah, you got to be tough or not.
Well, I think that the issue is laying a template on top of a pre-existing community, because we're not like other communities where people have smaller lots. I mean, some people out here have pretty big lot. You call it a lot, they can call it acreage. And to say you can only have one home on 100 acres or 500 acres or 1,000 acres, that's a little restrictive.
Sure
But,
it is.
the challenge, and I'm glad you brought this up, Simeon, I was thinking about this, is as this reads today, we will grandfather, for lack of a better term, people that have these circumstances, but all they can do is caulk and paint those structures. If they add a canopy, they would be in violation. If they add a porch, if they add a bedroom, if they make any significant change to any of those structures, now they come outside from under the umbrella, and
Yep.
and of course, this council, I don't think, would be vindictive in that way, but as we've discussed before, we have no control over councils 10 or 15 or 20 years from now.
Right.
And-
Yeah, it's not vindictive. It's not. This regulation is patterned after the same type and form of regulations that that every other city I've ever seen has. A non-conforming structure is a big issue. The intent behind all zoning regulations is really to kind of have those grandfathered structures removed so that one day they will be conforming.
Right.
You cannot expand a non-conforming structure, but you can do repairs.
Right.
So you can change that if you want to, but I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, the goal here is the structure shouldn't be there in the first place, and we're imposing a regulation after the fact that we can't make these people remove it. But if one day the structure is damaged or destroyed by a tornado or a fire, if they abandon that structure and it's just vacant, a whole bunch of different circumstances that could happen that would justify a termination of the non-conforming structure and would require its removal.
So
But yeah, it's tough. You can't expand. I agree with you.
Well, and I agree too. I mean, we're trying to use a rubber band where we need to be using a chain, right? Something that doesn't stretch and move around, and so it's going to be tricky whatever we do. A question, while I've got the mic here for Simeon, since you drafted it, or you either one, but what category would just open unoccupied land fall into? I mean, if somebody has a 100-acre pasture somewhere, what is the category for that?
AR, agrarian.
But does AR stand for agrarian residential, or does it stand for agrarian?
It's technically, it's agricultural. We call it agrarian, but it's agricultural.
Okay,
It includes both. It includes farming, ranching, raising crops,
okay.
livestock, and living. In most cities, the agricultural zoning regulations are kind of a fallback or a placeholder. Newly annexed territories typically regarded as being agrarian or agriculturally zoned until one day it's put to the appropriate use. For us, it's the AR, Agrarian Residential District. You can live there, sure, but you also have your farms and your ranches and whatever else. Yeah.
And I have another question on that, is that the 5 acres, given our unique boundaries, it's really hard to have 5 acres inside the city without part of it going in the ETJ.
Yep.
So if you have the one house, say you have 5 acres, one house is in the city, and so it's got the limit of 1, or whatever our limit is, but then the ETJ, the rest of the acres, say it's 3 more acres. And so 2 of the acres are in the city, and that's meets the zoning. The 3 acres that are in the ETJ, are they totally wide open? You can have however many houses you want in them?
Yes.
So to
All right,
clarify,
so, let's make sure you understand this, though.
Yeah.
Let's say 3 acres in town and 3 acres outside of town in the ETJ. If there is no existing home on the in-town 3 acres, but there is a home, and it's one lot, one tract, but there is a single-family residence in the ETJ on that same tract, then we would these regulations would prohibit the construction of a second home on that same lot. If there's already a home on the 3 acres in town, and they wanted to build a home on the 3 acres out of town, we have no jurisdiction to say no.
but
You understand how that works?
Okay, so say it's 50 acres, and 3 acres are in the town, and 47 are outside the town. So inside the town, we have, say, one house. Then in the 47 acres, could put in apartments or
Multifamily,
And it's not.
warehouse distribution.
And it's not governed by this zoning at all?
Nope, we don't have the authority
Right.
to regulate density or uses or structures in our ETJ.
It's
The law doesn't
very,
give us that.
it's very limited, but
Okay, well, I thought that, but I wanted to hear you.
So and that's kind of why I think some of the citizens has said, how do we get citizens to voluntarily annex in so that we have
Right.
some say in that if we want to protect our area?
Well, we can only regulate or impose these regulations within the town limits. And the more people, the more property we have in town, the better control we have over future uses. These are essentially land use controls, but these are really non-restrictive. I mean, these are really, really non-restrictive. It's an exercise of the town's police power, but this is the only real best tool that you have to control density and to control the pattern of future growth, if there is any. Without this, anybody can build whatever they want, and you have no say-so over it. This gives you the ability to control it to some extent. And like I said before, this is the least restrictive as it could possibly be, short of not having anything at all.
So
Well,
you
that's-
mentioned legal nonconformant, and I want to follow up because it's a concern of mine and many citizens. And I'm going to give a pretty, I guess, the example that people are afraid of is, let's say on a main street, this council, future council, zones a business district. That might include houses now. Those houses would then become legally non-conforming, but legal.
Yep.
Nice brick houses.
Yep.
Maybe even a modular home, mobile home. Tornado or fire comes through there, burns it down, they can't rebuild.
Yep,
So
that's how it works. Now, you
and that's
don't
a
have-
concern.
I understand that. The zoning districts that you adopt, that you don't adopt by this ordinance, but you'd adopt by adopting a map, don't necessarily needs to be one big square or one contiguous square. I mean, it can be as gerrymandered as our town limits are right now. I mean, you don't have to impose business zoning on every piece of residential property that's along Main Street kind of thing. And so, if you do, though, that's exactly correct. It becomes a legal nonconforming use. The property owner has the authority to use that property for that purpose and that structure for that purpose as long as they want, forever and ever, until it's destroyed, damages, or the use is abandoned, or if we have a board of adjustment that amortizes the nonconforming use, which is really complicated and it's not a part of this ordinance. But
So that being
And-
said, a less exact way, let's just say we have a legal non-conforming house that's in a SFE.
sure,
It just doesn't meet the requirements. Maybe it's too close, whatever.
setbacks are a good
That
example.
house falls under that same clause, right? It cannot be rebuilt to the same,
If it's a setback violation, it becomes really touchy because, you can't expand the use that expands into the setback area that they're in violation of, but you could expand the use behind it, if that makes any sense.
yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, I was worried about that. And to follow up on what Terry was saying, and for clarification point, we're not planning on doing any business
No.
zoning district. I think
Well,
that's
the
more
rea-
of a,
The easy way to do this is if somebody's got a house on a piece of property that you want it in the business district, just don't zone it for business, zone it for SF.
absolutely. But that is a call to action to make sure we have good future counsel to make sure they don't impose any bad zoning ordinances. I mean, that's one of the main worries. I did want to follow up, real quick. I'm trying to jump back.
zoning area, though.
Yeah, go
We
ahead.
might have taken your advice the wrong way. At one point, you told us a comprehensive map was broad strokes of the paintbrush, so therefore, that's why those business districts were built in that form.
Yep.
So that's just a comprehensive plan. That doesn't necessarily define how we have to zone it.
Nope.
Okay.
So I don't think on our comprehensive map we had any section that was business, because most
We didn't,
of the
but that was
places
the
are
instructions.
residential,
They
even
are.
among the business areas.
So
But-
what you need to know about that, your comprehensive plan is to be used as a guideline. It's not a set of zoning regulations, and the plan actually has to have that specific language in it that says that. Your zoning regulations are supposed to be adopted in accordance with the comprehensive plan. And there are a lot of people out there that don't know enough about it that say, if you adopt a zoning regulation that isn't strictly in accordance with your comprehensive plan, then the regulation is invalid. But that's not exactly correct. So the comp plan is your guideline. That's your pattern. Your zoning should follow that pattern, but it doesn't necessarily have to. And you can amend the comprehensive plan anytime you want, in any way that you want.
So I will say one thing about the comprehensive plan and our vision for the this zoning ordinance as far as the acreage goes per property in different districts. Our idea was that we wouldn't qualify the acreage in the town as being the determining factor for what zone it went in, but rather the whole mother tract. So if they have an acre in the town, 50 acres outside of, they're not going to be put in SF, they're going to be put in AR.
That makes
Right.
sense.
All right. Do we need any wording in here to clarify that? Because hearing Mr. Tom asking what he did earlier, I just want to make sure we're covered.
Well, and I have one other kind of related question. Let's say you have land that's 2 acres inside the city, and it meets all the septic requirements of the state, et cetera, and so it technically would be non-conforming by this, but since it's grandfathered, it's okay. Now, if that land is sold and the property is sold or inherited by somebody else, then did you say that existing houses are still okay going forward?
The transfer a transfer of ownership does not terminate a non-conforming use.
That's what I thought you said, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So you can sell it as many times as you want,
and it's
all
still-
day long, and it's still
okay.
going to be a
And
non-conforming
those 2
use.
that are in the city on the 2 acres, 1 acre each is still okay?
Yes.
Okay.
A non-conforming use structure or lot is terminated. The non-conforming status terminates when there's an abandonment plus some overt act that in furtherance of the abandonment, or we amortize the use, or they fit within the termination provisions of the ordinance. So generally, as a rule, a sale of property does not do anything to the
Okay.
non-conforming status.
I thought I understood you.
Yeah, it's important to know that. You got to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So.
So just for clarification point, the mother tract is inferred in this document already, no additional verbiage needed?
No, what you're referring to really, though, isn't necessarily these regulations, but the zoning map that you will ultimately adopt. You just got to consider those things when you adopt that map.
Gotcha. Okay.
That makes
That's
sense,
a zoning map question, okay.
Right.
So question, if you have a property that, say, has 4 acres and it's mostly all in town, and about 3 acres of that is a business, and there's a lot of business activity going on there, and then maybe 1 acre has a residence on it, how would that best be handled?
So you got a mixed use on a single tract or a single lot. The adoption of the zoning regulations, the mixed use is non-conforming. It's either going to be a non-conforming business use or non-conforming residential use, depending on where the boundaries are drawn in the comprehensive zoning map. However, the comprehensive zoning map does not need to be strictly in accordance with lot lines. So the map itself can bisect or transect that piece of property so that the business portion is in one district and the residential portion is
Okay.
regarded as being
All
something
right,
different.
perfect, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I have a question on, like what she was just talking about, this either non-conforming residential or business. I'm not talking 10 years down the line, but this fall, we have a thunderstorm come through and we have tornadoes, and it wipes it out. We've already passed this as it stands. They can't rebuild. So they're out of business, or they're out of a home, or,
They could apply for a hardship variance with the Board of Adjustment, meaning the city council. Town council, the rules regarding a BOA are a little bit different. You don't act as a town council, you act as kind of a commission or a board. You have to have a quorum of 4. But the destruction of a non-conforming use is a grounds for consideration as a variance. So the council, acting as a Board of Adjustment, under some circumstances, could authorize the reconstruction of a non-conforming structure that was totally destroyed by fire, tornado, or other natural disasters. That makes sense? In other words, the rule is that they can't rebuild it. However, that being said, they can ask the BOA for a variance, and the BOA can grant that variance and allow them to rebuild.
And then that would forevermore continue to be a non-conforming structure?
Yes, it would. But the variance runs with the land. It's not a zoning change or a deed restriction, but it's something like that, so that once the variance is granted, they're allowed to reconstruct, and unless the order from the BOA doesn't say the right words, they'd be allowed to use it forever and ever as a non-conforming use, or the order from the BOA could regard it as a conforming use. So they could expand it. So it just depends on what the BOA does.
I have one other question, and, you know, Simeon's initial draft, you edited very, very heavily.
I'm sorry about that. I felt really bad about that. I was really worried because, you know, people are going to hate me for doing that. But the edits that I made really were trying to, by and large, to try to make this one cohesive, organized document that was in accordance with state law, that would hold up in court if it ever had to.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, is did you do it with the idea that to make it legal or to make it common as to what you've seen other people have?
My edits are geared towards making it legal
I see.
and making the consequences of zoning decisions sustainable in court under strict judicial review. I have absolutely no input over what the community should look like, how people should handle or run their properties or their farms. I had no business doing that. I am not trying to do that in this. And when I did this, I lost a lot of sleep over this because I knew it was going to raise eyebrows. I mean, some substantial, dramatic changes. And I know that a lot of people put a whole lot of time and effort into this. You know, I just kind of wish that, unfortunately, I wish I'd have been involved in that process a long, long time ago. Then we wouldn't have had to make so many dramatic.
Well,
Well,
I appreciate that
I
because
can-
my comments with Simeon after in the last meeting were just that you must have some legal reason for wanting to do that,
Yeah,
for
I'm not-
making the change.
Yeah, I ain't making it up, trust me.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but personally, I mean, I'm not offended at all. We did spend a lot of time and effort, but I can also tell what you were saying, that all of your document works together really well,
Right.
which, by the way, I'm very impressed with, because we
Okay.
spent a year and a half and figured out how complicated these things were, and you just whipped this one up pretty quick. I mean,
Okay.
yeah,
That was a long weekend. Trust me, that was a long weekend.
okay.
But like Tara said before, it's very common to see zoning regulations, comprehensive zoning ordinances that are 80 to 100 pages long. You know, I've worked on them years and years, a long, long time. This one is as short and sweet as it gets. It will also enable the council, as time goes on, and as, you know, the town progresses, you may want to make changes to it, and you can increase, decrease requirements, you can do whatever you want with it. Understand this, though, it's a zoning regulation. In order to make any changes, it will require public hearings with letters and publications and posting on the internet, all that kind of stuff. So any change you would make to this ordinance, and even the adoption of this ordinance, will require a great deal of public input. Everyone has the opportunity. It's fully transparent. Everyone has the chance to have a say-so over it.
Hey, we love accountability.
On
That's
that
good.
note, I'm going to give you a break for standing up,
Thank
and
you.
then we have citizens
Excuse me, before
Is that
we,
okay?
I have one more question.
Okay,
On
all right.
6.3,
I was almost there.
Before we get to citizens.
I mean, I had a
on
lot more
signage,
questions.
It says no off-premise sign in excess of 10 feet in height measured from the average grade of the property shall exist or be constructed. Is that also a state law? Or?
Oh, no, it's not. I don't think it's a good idea to have billboards in town. That regulation is specifically intended to allow you to prohibit billboards, and that's all, nothing else.
Okay, so, but if we had 20 feet, that would still be legal?
Yep.
Okay.
So if we have a 20-feet one now and we pass this, is that non-conforming property because of the signage?
Yep.
The whole property is non-conforming
The
because
sign
of
is
the signage?
non-conforming, not the property. The sign
Okay.
is structure. Can I sit down now?
All right. On
We'll
the
get
zero-
back to you. I've
we'll
got
get
more
back-
questions.
Yeah, we'll give them a break and then let citizens comment. Okay, Patrick Smith? If you're signed up for number one, would you go ahead and please do us the kind favor of getting in line? That'll save us some time, please. Patrick Smith?
Patrick Smith, 187-30-1565. Has the town council established procedures for adopting and enforcing zoning regulations?
I think most of those are state requirements from what we researched. I think Mr. Berman could speak to that more, but a lot of it's state regulated, like you have to call in people to do an open forum, like he was saying earlier, and we have to have a board of commission. I mean, that's state required, so it's not necessarily to do with us as much.
Okay, so but you're saying The town of Poetry hadn't established procedures for adopting and enforcing zoning regulations. We're just complying with state law.
I think we have to.
Okay.
Is that, Mr. Berman, is that correct, what Simeon said?
Is this thing working? I don't have to get up.
Josh, is that on?
Yeah, it is.
Hold, can you ask
State-
him that when my 3 minutes is not running?
No, that's
Oh.
part of your 3 minutes.
Okay.
State law imposes the procedures for adopting zoning regulations. We don't impose them, state law does.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Has there been a public hearing within the meaning of Texas Local Government Code 211.006 with regard to the zoning regulations the town council is considering taking action on this evening?
No, sir, it's not quite time for that. We'll need to have a final draft, and then we'll pose it to the public and let there be a public forum for everyone.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Shelley Smith?
Yeah, similar to Patrick's questions, my interpretation of the planning and zoning is that all of the decision-making should be done in public so that the citizens can see how a decision is arrived at, correct? So none of this has been done in public. And this, the zoning ordinance posted in the agenda packet is not the same one that was posted last month, correct?
There should have been edits in it.
Yeah,
I didn't
so
look
it's
at
not
it,
the
but
same
it
one that
should
was
be-
posted last
Yeah, it
month.
should be different.
So I haven't seen any notices for public hearings on planning and zoning, and this is not
So
the
let,
planning and zoning meeting.
so let me qualify. There was a plan put forth by Simeon White, and there was a plan put forth by Attorney Berman. Both of those should have been in the packet.
Right.
Okay,
But
but we
they're
haven't made no
not-
decisions yet.
But tonight's thing said to take action.
So
The action may be
just-
as simple as putting it on next month's agenda. We do have to comply with the public notification, and that's what we plan on doing.
To-
There have been no decisions
To
yet.
be clear, we can't pass this tonight.
No.
No way, shape, or form.
Okay,
So
good to know. And also, I know part of your deliberation was how many houses within the city limits on a certain owner's lot. How many city limit lots are 5 acres or more?
I think that's in our comprehensive plan. I don't know the number
No,
off
no,
the
I mean,
top of
I mean,
my
like,
head.
if you look at the map, all of the, everything that 311,
Right.
how many of those are 5 acres?
So this is what we were discussing with Mr. Berman earlier, because there's pretty much nobody, right? I mean, the tiny strip that's in the town
Right.
is like no acreage.
Right, so, and
what-
I don't mean to interrupt, but my minutes are going to run out.
Oh, sure.
But, so what I'm thinking is, y'all need to go back and look and see what is the largest lot that's within the city limits, so that you can tailor your planning and zoning to that size lot, because you can't do anything outside of that size lot. So you can talk all you want about, oh, how many houses in 10 acres? It doesn't matter if that whole 10 acres isn't in the city limits. Does that make sense?
It does,
So-
and that's what we were discussing, is you could do that, but then it might be unfair because a huge 100-acre farm might only have, 0.25 acres in the town, and
Right,
it wouldn't
but-
be fair.
But you have nothing to do with beyond the 311.
But we can qualify what counts as a 5+ acre lot by saying any of that mother track, any of the actual parcel itself, whether in the town or out of, is what we're qualifying.
But
So
there's
if they
two
have
parcel IDs.
That's fine. If they have 2 acres in the town, 3 acres outside of the town, they'd be classified as AR.
Thank you, Shelley. So as Attorney Berman clarified, it is based on the mother track, and so I think that's what he's referring to.
Well, but that sort of opens up the can of worms like we have over in Kaufman County side, where they split tracks and things, and is it all considered one?
But the property ID doesn't
I don't know, I think. we
No,
gotta-
I mean, I have 22 acres, it might have 3 property IDs, it doesn't matter.
So for clarification, as far as I know, lots have to do with tracks, and I think that's how the wording in this document is. So it matters their plat. You know, just because there's a split in Kaufman doesn't mean people can build on, 0.5 acres behind their property or sell off only the front portion of their property in the town, because it's not platted. Nobody has two pieces of property because of the different tax jurisdictions. They just have two different tax jurisdictions.
Okay, Chad McFarland? I don't think he's here. Brian Benson?
Hi there. So this zoning ordinance, the revised zoning ordinance still prohibits the use of trailers as residences. So I'm still against that. I had a discussion with Mr. White prior to the meeting tonight, and he was under the impression that that there was an implicit waiver of that you could have a residence in a trailer, because it's not stated anywhere that you can't, but that actually, in my mind, that sentence says that you can't. But even still, I think that if we have an implicit understanding, we need to make it an explicit understanding, or else there's no reason to go into the different definitions anyway. If you can do whatever's not in the document, then there's no reason to say that you can do this or you can do that, right? Okay, so that was one. Also, my house would fall into an AR district, and yeah, not naming names, but I'm the guy that might have more houses than would be qualified. And it also says that, the AR district states accessory uses that are incidental to the permitted use are also allowed and may include dwellings for proprietors and employees, etc. Since my property would fall into the AR, and I have a house for myself and for my parents and for my wife's mother, a direct reading of this ordinance would require that I come back for special use permit if one of these houses were destroyed, because the ordinance does not allow for non-employee family members. I hope this is a simple oversight. I wrote this before I realized it was not an oversight, since more of us have families on our properties than we have employees. The district regulations concerning setbacks seem to be reasonable to me, and beyond that, I don't see that there's an overwhelming need for us to regulate what a person does on their property beyond ensuring compliance with county health ordinances. And just as a general philosophy, if we keep saying we want poetry to be different, so if we want poetry to be different, then we have to stop using the templates from other places. We have to start trailblazing for some of these things ourselves. And I know Mr. Berman is completely capable of that. I respect Mr. Berman for what he does. He's protecting the town, and his experience has been with making sure the town has full protection. So I respect his work. I just disagree with the philosophy, because we're not wanting to be like everyone else. So that's my say.
Could I ask you a couple questions to specify? Sure. I know we discussed the trailer and the travel, and I mean, I think that you'd be fine anyways, but for clarification, would you rather that whole thing be struck from the ordinance, or would you rather modify that to say, and living quarters?
Can I insert something here? On page 11, the definition says travel trailer, cattle trailers, etc., storage not to be used for living quarters, any unpowered vehicle. So to address what was said last meeting, any unpowered vehicle designed to be towed by a powered vehicle not to be used for living quarters. That's so that we don't have someone who has unsafe sanitary practices, I believe is what this means, taking a cattle trailer and making it into a residence.
But I think Brian or somebody pointed out last week, we do have people moving to poetry on raw land that live in a trailer for a year or so while they build a house.
And I think that's perfectly okay. I'm okay.
My time has
But
expired.
that's-
Can I answer, or am I done?
We can extend his, can't we? I mean, I thought we could take a vote
Yeah,
to
we
extend. Can we do that?
We can.
For clarification.
And I would just like to say that personally, I mean, maybe the council disagrees, but I'd like to get Mr. Bryan's opinion. I'm personally okay with people living in their travel trailers. I think that's fine. My neighbor's doing it as he's building his log cabin. I think that's great. I've known lots of other people too. And I've had 3 people now reach out to me about this specific item. And even if you're technically allowed to do it, I'd like to change it for clarification because obviously it's confusing people.
So it is
would you
confusing.
rather- Would you rather completely strike that, not even talk about travel trailers, or do you think we should modify the travel trailer one to say, and it can be used for living quarters?
Strike it.
Yeah, I would be good with striking it. That would be my preference.
Strike it, all right.
But to Mr. Jaffe's point, you know, that unpowered, I'm sorry, I think that was your point, Tara. Unpowered, I know that we have people living in our town who are in unpowered homes. Their house does not have electricity running to it. So we're going to say, okay, if you can afford a home, that's okay. But if you can't afford a home and you're living in a trailer, that's not okay.
Well, I think, I read the unpowered as being like an RV versus a motor home. That's right.
That's how
A
I took it
motor
too.
home has power, an RV, or a trailer has to be towed, so that's,
But most houses also have hookups to electrical mains. But again, I know that there are people living in our town that do not have electricity in their home.
yeah, I guess, you know, we'd have to be, just thinking out of the box, we'd have to be careful, because I'm not a big fan of RV parks, not that people who stay in RV parks are bad people, but that's kind of a high density of sorts, and so I think we'd have to be careful, and maybe we consider something where we say you can live in a trailer for up to 2 years or something, and then you have to come back to the council and get approval and continue. I don't know. But
So I've got a question for you about the other one concerning the multiple houses on there. Because I know in all technicality, well, first, how many acres do you have roughly?
Just under 11.
Just under, see.
I'm sorry, Tara, am I still extended?
Well,
Please.
I do think that, have you given this a time? All right, we're going to give you 30 more seconds. To be fair, we need to be
Okay.
just in this.
Well, I'll try to ask this
So,
quick then.
Yes.
So pretty
let's
much my
just do-
idea was to let, in the AR, you can have a house per every 2 acres that you have an AR. So in your circumstance, you could have 5 houses on your property if you wanted. Now, you can do this anyways if you felt like it by just platting your property, and the town would have nothing to say about it. But I don't want people to have to do that. That seems like a pain.
From my reading of the ordinance, an AR only allowed multiple houses if those multiple houses were for the proprietor and the employees.
That's how it is in this one. I want to change it. Would that work? The 2 acres, every 2 acres, you can have a dwelling in AR? Because that would work in your circumstance.
I don't want this formed around my needs. I want this formed around the needs of the town moving forward, and part of the needs
Thank you,
is to-
Brian. We appreciate your input.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Well,
you.
your needs are my needs.
Okay. All right, Candy
At least this
Fletcher?
comes to zoning.
Candy Fletcher, Private Road 2331. My question is, how does the grandfathering work? If you're going to grandfather certain things in at some point, how does that work?
Can we get something from
you
legal?
can keep it until we change our mind.
Well,
that's really what it
it's
means. I
Candy,
mean,
it's called non-conforming, so it is written in as non-conforming. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier is, okay, if it is destroyed by a storm or some sort of event, or it's out of operation for 6 months, isn't that correct, 6 months? Then it could be it could be.
I mean, how do you know
taken-
that there was something there in the beginning? And I just don't understand the whole grandfathering in with the zoning. Is it going to be something written down saying, okay, this person's already got 2 properties on theirs, this person has 1?
I think most of the time, isn't this correct? I think most of the time it might say AR non-conforming or SF non-conforming. So it's already written in the map,
Well,
I guess. in the
I
map.
don't know that we're going to do an inventory of the whole town, are we?
That's my
I don't
question.
think
Or does
so.
the owner just
You don't need to do
document
that.
the fact that it was there on that date? So
Yeah,
they
you don't
would-
need to go that far. What you're talking about is an evidentiary issue, in the event that someone
Right.
asserts that it's non-conforming and someone says that it should be terminated. It's based on what the property owner says, what the city officials know it to be. You don't need anything special. There's no magic wands magic labels that you put out there that says that it's lawful non-conforming. It just is.
Okay,
It's just based on what people know and what they say.
okay. And the second question, real quick, is there any way of, as a town, doing a different set of rules for developers than town folk?
So,
How do you define a developer?
I mean,
How
that,
do you define a developer?
Can,
Well,
can we,
somebody-
that's a good question, I think, Attorney Berman, is, so the citizens among us who've lived here for, say, at least 6 months to a year, can they get a special treatment over a developer who lives in New York, or who lives elsewhere, or who,
What is-
outside of our area?
What does that mean, though? I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but what does it mean?
Well, if you have someone who is not a resident of the area and wants to come in and do something XYZ in our town, is there, and this came up, I think, in another,
Yeah,
Yeah.
came up the other day.
so can we be good, especially good to our residents among us who are already here?
That's called an equal protection violation.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, you can't do
Yeah,
that.
okay.
You
Okay.
can't,
That answers that question.
sorry.
Okay. But we're going to discriminate against people that may not have electricity. I mean,
I don't think we should.
Okay, thank you,
think we should
Candy.
Well, I
Change
think,
that.
and quickly, Tara, for the comment that Tara and I just made, so we attended a Section 8 meeting over in Kaufman County the other day, and one of the comments came up in the discussion about there are a lot of people in New York and California buying property in Texas for rental and for investment, and they will never set foot in Texas. It's just on a balance sheet somewhere, and they may buy it to abandon it. They may not even buy it to actually put somebody in it because they may need a tax write-off or something. And so they were talking about, and this is for future, setting up housing authority and having rental rules that say, there has to be someone available to get to the property within so many minutes. That
45
way,
minutes, I
people
think.
living that far away would be in violation and all of that. So, but I don't think any of that would translate over to own stuff. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
think
not
there'd be
really
any way to
zoning.
do a carve-out.
Yeah, that's not really a zoning regulation. That's something different.
Yeah.
So to bottom line it, I think we can discriminate off of uses, but not people.
Okay, Herbert Fletcher.
Well, I haven't read the new documents on this stuff, but I'm still against the travel trailers because like I told all of you, I've used them twice now for a kid or a grandkid to live in temporarily, and I don't want them sitting next to the road. I don't want them to be an eyesore, which my place is way off the road. Nobody can see it. Nobody can see my house. That's why I bought it. I like my privacy, but I don't like being told what to do on my land. And that's why I moved out of town. Because, like I said before, it came to fistfights in the city of Terrell with me and inspectors and them telling me what I could and couldn't do. And I won, that fight in court. So, it didn't matter to me one way or another. I was going to stand my ground, but I'd love to be part of this community. I like y'all guys. You're great guys. You do a wonderful job. You donate your time. You're not getting paid for this, but I think a lot, like Mr. Jaffe said, I don't trust the government. And right now, that's y'all. But I'm more concerned not about y'all, but the future council 10 years down the road. They might be somebody from New York or California, just like took over Tyrrell a few years back, that they wanted to be another Dallas. I don't want a Dallas. I don't want a Tyrrell. I just want Portree. Just like I found it, just like it is now, preferably unincorporated, but, we've got it. We got to do something with it, and we got to deal with it. And I'm here to help. I don't want to be a hindrance to y'all. I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to do anything. I like you, and I know I respect most of you on here. I've met you personally, and I
Don't point, just in case.
yeah. There you go. But anyhow, that's all I want to say. Just think things over before you put it into stone, because once it's there, it's a lot harder to take out.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you,
Well,
Herbert.
and encouragement, Herbert, and I sent you this in an email, stay involved. We need input from people like you and
Yeah.
others. Stay involved, and you may not get exactly what you want, but we want to hear your input.
And
So
hey, we
we
like
are-
that. And,
so,
and
you
to
know-
build on that a little bit, I'll just as clarification, because a couple people have reached out to me like this wasn't the case, but I hope everybody knows that every ordinance that has been put in an agenda so far, anything like that, the council doesn't like it. If we liked it, we'd be looking for approval. We don't like the ordinances the way they are right now. So if you see stuff in there, it isn't because we want it in there necessarily. We're still looking to edit and modify this, so it's not like we're all standing in favor of this or anything right now. We're just trying to figure out what the town needs.
So Attorney Berman, question, so would it be possible to maybe amend the travel trailer? I think the idea behind this is the ICE ordinance value. I have received several complaints from citizens who have like those boxcar trucks or an abandoned bus in town, and they're like, look, this is not fair to us. We have to see this every single day, day in and day out. And so, I mean, I feel for them. They, you know,
So people are living in them or just eyesore stuff?
they're storing things in them. And they said it would be temporarily, but it's been like 2 years.
Well, but that's that's an ordinance, that's not a zoning
Yeah,
thing. I mean,
and-
that's- people aren't living in them.
And I don't want people to not be able to. I want them to be able to buy a storage container and put their junk in it. I mean, honestly, that's part of country. And country isn't, perfect marble streets or anything like that. It's focusing on freedom. But we want to be courteous to our neighbors too. And I think that's why the setbacks are there, because we don't want them butting up against the road. I don't think anybody wants that. So having them set back, I think it's 75 feet, at least helps. And a lot of people have trees in their front yard, so it would mostly be covered in most circumstances, I would think.
Okay, Louis Cernock?
Well, 52 years ago, I lived in a honeymoon house up on Porter Farms. Then I bought a piece of property between here and 986, and I moved to trailer house, pardon me, and I lived in it for about 4 years, and then I built a nice house down there, and so I stepped up, and I understand the affordable housing things and for people and the things that are needed for everybody. Y'all are a work in progress. I don't expect the city to know everything in the world, but the more I listen to everything tonight, the more I want to tell you, you need to reach out and do more annexation, more ordinances, more restrictions. It's unbelievable what you might run into here. Councilman Jaffe, he said something about we don't make restrictions that will come back to bite us. Well, let me tell you something. I have to look at something every day next door to some property that I have that comes back and bites me every day because there were no restrictions. I would have begged the city of Terrell to annex us in up there if I would have known what was going to happen there. It doesn't matter what it sells for. The land sold for about $7,000 an acre, and it was split up into 10-acre tracts. And the next thing you know, it sold for $18,900. And then we've got stuff like people moving in junk cars the very next day, starting to haul them in on their property. I'm trying to settle down. I swore I wasn't going to talk so loud. I called the county. I said, "What can you do?" Well, you can't do a thing as long as they put them 300 feet off the road. So the county came out and made them move their old junk cars off 300 feet off the road. They continue to be up there. My son owns 27 acres up the road here. He could fill that 27 acres up, and everybody that drove from here to 986 would be bitten every day because of what they would see. And he could fill that thing up as long as he did not take a part off of that car and sell it. And it could be that way. The people that moved in down on the corner of my street, some of the people asked them, said, "How do you like this area right here?" It'd be fine if that guy down at the end of the road wouldn't be driving his tractors up and down it and his old trucks and trailers. I don't want restrictions like that. But y'all have to do something. I don't want restrictions that say my cows can't bawl all night long whenever I wean them off. But I don't want my daughter to come home from having a brain tumor removed and have to listen to somebody playing music down the road that's so loud that it's bouncing her windows off the wall the night she comes in. We have to have some kind of restrictions, common sense kinds of things. I wish that you'd take a trip with me to the southern part of the county. I had to go there a couple of years ago for some reason. And whenever I got down there, I was amazed, appalled, destroyed by what it looked like. I went over to another part of the county, in the southwestern part of the county, a few months back. I couldn't believe what I saw there because no restrictions, nothing was going on. And so I encourage you so much to try to stop some of this. I'll take any of you that want to go down there and see that. And I've got many more things I could tell you about, but I'm going to stop right there.
So,
I just want to
Louis?
encourage y'all so much to do your job. Things are going to bite you if we don't do our job, and you're going to be very sad that you did not. I bought a piece of property a month ago, 2 months ago. I sold half of it today. You know what one of my restrictions on it was? And it's within a mile of your house. No pig farms. I buy land because I want to restrict it. Profit is great.
I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank
Can you
you very
state your
much.
address, Louis?
6711 Green Meadow Lane.
Okay, thank you. We need to
Okay.
remember
Louis,
to
just
state
for
our address.
clarification, is the land that's right next to you, you mentioned about your daughter, do you know if that is in the town limits or is it in the ETJ?
It's definitely in the town
Okay.
limits. It is in town.
I don't know the property, but, okay.
And a noise ordinance might affect the ETJ. So, I mean, that'd be something to look at. I think that's what you're suggesting, perhaps.
Can I say one more comment? The county came out, and they stand on her front door, and they got I think it's called a decimal meter, and they pointed at that place where that noise is coming from. And they said, oh, it's not bad enough. I'm telling you, it was bouncing the windows. You know, they were vibrating. It was so loud. And the county can't do a thing about it.
So
Okay.
Mr. Cernock brings up a good point.
Okay, so I
addressing me?
gave him
No,
additional
we're
30
just gonna
seconds. He's
talk.
going to go ahead, yeah, I gave him an additional 30 seconds, but go
So
ahead and say-
he brings that up, and I think it's important for the citizens to hear too. If we buy properties and we decide to sell them, or we sell our place, we have the ability to put deed restrictions on there, and that's going to be a good way to control our ETJ because we don't have any legal rights as a town. That piece of property you're talking about is actually closer to your house than mine, but it would serve both, right? So those deed restrictions were keeping that pig farm from your house stinking as well as mine, and the.
I buy it so I can restrict it.
Okay, okay, so that does bring up a good point, and that's one thing we're trying to encourage the citizens to do is the deed restrictions. Okay, Kevin Sinkovich, he's passing. Robin Followill. Please remember to state your address. Thank you.
10658 County Road 2400. Before I even start, I want to ask for extra time because I am an expert on this topic. I'm a zoning inspector. I hold the state license for Code Enforcement 1 and 2, and I also hold the ICC International Code for Zoning, IPMC Property Maintenance, and Permit Tech. So I'm covered on the expert. I would like to ask for extra time ahead of time. Whatever I guess she's going to give me.
So, okay, shoot, go ahead.
Okay, so the part that I want to talk about is where you have in here section 19 about the penalties of violation. So, and I know you're going to detest me on this, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it on out there. Only a code enforcement, a officer of the court, can issue violations, notice of violations, and citations for the state. And you have to determine all of the violation fees. You have to follow all the steps. You have to be able to send notice. You actually have to have a building code that you can do the state code, but you have to at least adopt that. I did verify all this with my officer, Code Enforcement Officer 2 instructor this week, specifically because of our town. He was completely appalled about, we don't have to do that because we're a baby town. But for anything to be, you have to at least adopt the state code. We have no state code to go by for any developers. But none of you will be able to do a notice of violation or write a citation because you're not an officer of the court. You're not a code enforcement officer. So if you think you're going to be able to do that when all this comes into play, you're going to have to hire somebody that is licensed by the state. Baby town or no baby town, that does not matter.
Would you perhaps be interested in doing that?
There's no, I mean, this is the thing that you have to think about when you hire, like if you hire a code enforcement officer for your town, you have to look at all of the big picture, their salary, their benefits, their vehicle, the citations, every intimate of that has to tie into what you pay this person and for the budget. So,
Are there third-party enforcement companies, like Bureau Veritas serves as an engineer and so forth?
the problem, I'm not 100% sure on that. I could make a phone call and then email all y'all the result. You have to think, most of everyone that is a code enforcement officer works for a city.
Yeah.
So they are, I mean, they have their state license and they are sworn in by the court. They are an officer of the court by the state, but I'm not sure that they would be able to do that considering they work for a city and you're doing it for another city. I could easily answer that question tomorrow.
Okay.
And I think,
So
I
I
think
think,
it
I think Attorney Burmy can answer that for
Oh,
us.
while I've got you up here real quick, about the fine, didn't that feel a little high to you?
It is, and I will be
Okay, I
honest
thought
with you,
so.
when I write my
Was it like
citations,
5?
when I write my citations to the citizen,
Right.
like, for example, failure of owner's responsibility. So let's just say you had trash and debris everywhere. Whoever your code officer is sends them a notice for 10 days for them to comply. They don't comply, then you could write them, you could write multiple. But the main one you're going to write is like failure of owner's responsibility, then nuisance, trash debris. For the failure of owner's responsibility alone, it's going to be what you set these prices for. For in my town, which is pretty much a lot of towns, what they start their failure of owner's responsibility to be out is $1,000. And so here's the deal. So like if I wrote Terry a ticket for $1,000 for the failure of owner's responsibility, and he did not come into compliance by time, and I wrote him a citation, we go to a mock hearing where you can settle the citation or hopefully come to agreement before you would go to court. And he says, no, I don't want to take, if I said, hey, let's reduce that down to $576 for court costs, we can't touch that, the state gets that, and he didn't want to take the deal. Then he has a choice by trial or bench or jury. That's when that $1,000 can go up to $2,000 if the jury or bench decides for the penalty to be that expensive. But you're going to have a base rate that all of your nuisance, your trash, your failure of ownership, you're going to have your base as to what all those are, and that'll have to be decided. But
Sounds
then
like it should be lower, is what you're saying, though. I mean, would $500, I mean,
Well,
where's
this
the lot
just
that's
smaller
if you
says
than
come
not
that?
to exceed 2,000. This is not
Right.
saying each one's 2,000. It's not to exceed
Okay.
2,000. So to me, if we're going to be good to our citizens and kind of be unconventional, then I would want to make it
I'm
pretty
not saying
low.
to set it that high. I'm just trying to let you know reality. I'm in court every single week dealing with citations. I mean, I wrote over 300 last week.
Well, and you're
So-
also in a very large
But
metroplex
this
town.
doesn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with a large town or a small town.
you
Let's
have
say
a
I only did
suggestion?
10. I'm sorry.
Do you have a suggestion as an expert? I'd just love to get a figure, especially Miss Shelley brought this up last time, and I took note of it, and I do want to edit it. So as an expert, do you have
Well, but-
something you would replace that 2,000
Before we
with?
go there, Sammy, just for clarification, I feel like we've left the P and Z zone and gone into something else. I mean,
Well,
is this,
it's in.
and I'm not debating your expertise, I'm just saying, is it, Is
I'm
something
just
like
bringing-
trash, is that a zoning issue?
Well, no, so I think,
Well,
Yeah.
even if, I mean, there's multiple things you could do.
I'm
just
thinking like the house can't be there, so who's gonna go out and tell them the house has to move, or the house has to go away, or something, I don't know, those
When you
kinds of.
start, I'm sure, I didn't get a chance to read the whole entire thing. I'm sure if I got a chance to go through and read this whole thing, I could give you more specifics, this and
Okay,
this
I
and
guess
that.
I'm thinking
But
like
I'm
structures
I'm
and
just
things.
letting you know before you even think that you're gonna pass this and you're gonna enforce this penalty of violation section, y'all as council will not be able to do this
Yeah,
section.
I don't disagree with
Right.
that, that
So I just
seems reasonable.
want to make that very clear.
But I'm just thinking
appreciate it.
noise and trash and
Yeah,
cars, and I don't
no.
know, that sounds less like zoning and more like other kinds of,
Health and safety regulations.
yeah, something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fences, it can be all
I mean,
kinds
they
of
all have to
property
be
maintenance
enforced,
stuff
and
that
they
you
have to be
can.
enforced properly.
I'm just saying, for you to enforce anything, that you're gonna have to try to resolve that section,
Yeah.
because no council member's gonna do a notice of violation or write a
Yeah,
citation.
So noted.
thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Robin.
Okay, so Attorney Berman, do you have anything to say and clarify for us, please?
There are a handful of types of violations that a city, a municipality in Texas, can assess a maximum fine of $2,000 for. This is one of the very few. Everything else, you have the authority to set fines a maximum of $500. This is a zoning ordinance. I have never seen a zoning ordinance, any comprehensive zoning ordinance anywhere that did not have a maximum fine of $2,000. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. The fine amount is not, the maximum fine amount is not what someone's going to get fined with if they're in violation. First and foremost, we don't have anybody to write tickets. We don't have a municipal court to prosecute in. And in theory, in a worst-case scenario, in a really bad circumstance, the mayor could fill out a complaint form and could file a C misdemeanor criminal case in a local JP court. It could be prosecuted in that way. But that doesn't mean that the fine is going to be $2,000. I have seen a $2,000 fine assessed in a zoning case as many times as I can count on one hand. And I've seen thousands of cases. It doesn't happen very often, but when someone gets charged with a $2,000 fine, believe me when I tell you, they deserve it. And it's only because we can't charge them more than $2,000. The maximum fine is the maximum range. The range is between 0 or 1 and $2,000. The actual fine assessed is not within the discretion of the code enforcement officer or the person who writes the ticket or the person who files the charge. It's within the discretion of the judge. I mean, it doesn't mean they're going to be fined $2,000, but you got to have that amount in there. You need to have that in there. If one day we adopt international building codes, if one day we adopt nuisance codes and nuisance regulations, then we will adopt, and I will strongly recommend and advise that you adopt a punishment that is the maximum amount allowed by law. Not because that's what people are going to get tagged with, but because there are some people that deserve it, and those are the few that get it. Everybody else gets something a lot less than that.
Okay. So,
Well, that's good to know. I guess it is sensible then to keep the 2,000.
we have to start somewhere, and this is a simple zoning ordinance. We recognize that we might need a once-a-month municipal court like other small towns have to enact. I think Union Valley finally has their building codes enacted, and they have Veritas, I think, that does their.
Bureau Veritas is the one that most people use. They're a little bit expensive, but there are others out there in addition to that.
Yeah. So, we are doing what we can, and, this is the start of the process. And so,
As far as is the next step a public meeting, or what is the next step?
well, it depends on how comfortable, do you feel like there's a lot of changes that need to be made? We still have a lot to talk about, I feel like.
Yeah, I've got more questions, and I think we
So-
need a clean version with some edits that we've agreed on. I don't know if we vote
Can we
on
do
things
that?
we'd like to see an edit.
Yeah, every time this is considered by the council, it's always a public hearing, even though it's not posted as one. Every single item on every single agenda is effectively a public hearing. You guys are a long way from adopting a final zoning ordinance. You guys are a long way.
And so, for our purposes tonight, the agenda reads consideration and action. And so you can discuss amendments or changes to the draft that you're looking at. When the time finally comes to actually get down to the wire and adopt the code, you will publish notice in a newspaper of local circulation. You will post it on the agenda. It will be a public hearing. You will always have a public hearing every time you talk about this, even before you formally adopt it. So there's tons of opportunities for public input.
Well, in our format, anyway, is very similar to a public hearing. We allow citizens to speak on every agenda item, so we're allowing them to do that.
In every city, in some cities it's organized differently, but the rule in accordance with the Open Meetings Act is that every citizen has any person has an opportunity to talk about every agenda item before or during consideration. Most cities will allocate or relegate citizens' input to the very beginning of the agenda and will not allow citizens to speak to the council when the agenda item is actually reached unless it's officially noticed as a public hearing. You guys do it differently. You have citizens' input at the beginning of every single agenda item, which is fine. It's transparency. It involves everybody in the government. Nothing wrong with doing it that way. It just takes a little bit longer.
Okay, so would you mind stepping back up here? I think we have some additional questions. I did want to give you a break.
now that I've
but-
rested up,
Can he just sit down and do it? I mean,
Kind of David, a math problem. On page 3, the little table with designations, shouldn't the acreages be exclusive of one another so that they don't overlap? I mean, 2 to 5 acres and 1 to 2 overlap, so
No,
you
no.
shouldn't be able to fall into 2 categories, should you?
Yeah, no, that's okay. It doesn't matter if they overlap.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not exclusive, and if the uses are different in SFE versus SF, then somebody with property within that overlapping area might choose SFE versus SF.
Okay.
Depending on the regulations. Nothing
Okay.
wrong with doing
I
that.
thought they needed to be
okay.
unique.
well, I did have a question about the acreage amount, actually. Concerning the business, I was looking this over and it looks like it was struck from it. Is there no requirements for acreage for business? So couldn't they just make a ton of 1/8 acre lots for the business?
Not with a septic, they couldn't.
Yeah, there are going to be some
Well-
limitations on development without having a sanitary sewer system. They're not going to be doing that. You can put acreages on that.
Okay.
If you want to, you can. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't seen that before.
Can we do just the standard 2 acres?
Yeah, you can, but
I mean, I don't see why
you're
not.
not going to get a Dairy Queen.
I don't know if we want a Dairy Queen.
I know you may not want one.
Which
You
is,
put-
I mean, that was my other thing.
But you understand, it's going to be really, really difficult for most businesses to set up in town or to conduct themselves in town if you have a 2-acre minimum.
Well, that's not a bad thing in our mind.
I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we're looking, I know that other towns are trying to attract businesses and to get that sales tax, but I don't think expansion is what we're looking for in poetry, so.
You can impose acreage, are you?
Okay.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about.
That's an idea.
All right, great. Oh, concerning that, there was some, and this is partially for the council, and I also want to just make sure there isn't legal reason that you included this in here. In 10.2.2, and 10.2.21 to 5, 6, and 7, there are some uses that the research committee wasn't necessarily in favor of. Things like food market and grocery store, to me, that could be a Walmart that's allowed. I don't know if we're envisioning that. Are those specific ones, the .1, .2, .5, .6, .7, do we have to have that in there?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I just want to make sure.
So we can strike through any of those, because I
Yeah.
had a similar concern.
Yeah, the listed uses that are in here are either ones that came from the draft that I looked at or ones that I thought made sense within the context of those other permissible uses. But you can strike any or all of them if you
And
want.
then,
Okay,
can we
all right.
add one? I noticed as an agricultural area, we might want to add a vet clinic. Instead of a medical office, a vet clinic, because we have a lot of animals here, it makes a lot of sense, but.
What you would do is, in the table of allowed uses on page 7 in section 11, you add veterinarian clinic to that chart, indicate A under AR, and then blanks or S's in the other categories for the other zoning regulations. So understand how this works. In most cities, most comprehensive zoning ordinances will contain a table of allowed uses. The table of allowed uses is page after page after page. Everything that is not in that table is prohibited. Everything that's in there is allowed, whether it's allowed as a use by right or allowed as a conditional use permit or by special use permit. Our table of allowed uses is what, six lines? 6 rows, maybe 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah.
We have another document if you want to review this.
No, I don't want to know.
That's 6 or 7 pages long. But to that point, and I want to hear your legal advice on that, we were advised early on in our subcommittee group, whatever you want to call it now, if it wasn't explicitly excluded, then we couldn't stop it.
That is not correct.
Okay.
You're
So
saying
what
it's
is
the
legal
opposite. You
opinion?
can't say what's not allowed, you say what is allowed.
Yes.
Terry, did you
Although, understand
get that
this, understand
email
this.
from
This
Birmingham
zoning
talking about
code
that?
is written really, really loosely. In terms of uses that are allowed by right, we've got 6 categories in those different, categorical zoning districts. If you look at the descriptions of each of the zoning categories, SFE, or SF, and AR and B, it describes what is permissible and what's allowed. One way to do it, the most common way to do it, is to have a really, really long table of allowed uses. And you list every single thing you can think of. And when you do that, there are going to be other uses, sure enough, that you never thought about that are going to want to come into town. That always happens. This is much simpler. This doesn't prohibit everything. It allows very broad categories of uses. It allows a much greater freedom of land use while still trying to preserve the integrity of a rural community. So, you know, you can, if there are other uses that you think should be allowed in districts, absolutely add them. If the list of uses in the business district is if you're uncomfortable with it, absolutely take some out. You bet.
All right.
Just as a note, backing up to, we were in 10, backing up to 9, there's a numbering issue under 9.2. We need to change those. Looks like a cut and paste error.
That's pretty much what the email
Those
said.
should all be 9.
Oh, yeah, 90.
Well, it's not a cut and paste, it's because I revised
Yeah, whatever, it's just the numbers.
and moved things around. Yeah, I got it.
What is, in section 11, David, it talks about no land shall be used, no building structure shall be occupied, used, erected, altered, removed, placed, or demolished. I mean, what's the issue with not allowing people to demolish things?
Well, they're allowed to demolish. That statement is as broad as it could possibly be. You want to make sure that nobody's going to be using property for things that are not within this table or not within the broad categories authorized in that particular zoning district. It doesn't prohibit people from demolishing it. It just, no land or building shall be demolished contrary to the following table. I'm going to have a hard time finding something in the table that prohibits a building from being demolished.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm
Somebody
saying?
wants to take down an old building, seems like they could. I didn't know if it was some historical implication or something.
It's a broad statement that is intended to cover every possible situation.
Okay.
Section 17 is the section that discusses how we would make changes to the ordinance. Is that normal, or is it extra? I want that to Simeon's original draft and stuff. I want that to be as complicated as it can be for future councils. I want the citizen input. I want the citizen notification. I want every opportunity we can to have citizen input as long as we can.
Understood. The regulations that you see in 17.3 are essentially a reprint or a restatement of exactly what state law would otherwise require, with the exception of 17.3.2.4. That one is, a lot of cities will adopt that kind of a regulation. You are required, if you change zoning on a piece of property, you change your zoning district boundary, you must send letters to everybody within 200 feet of the property. You can expand that to 500 feet if you want to. You are also required to publish notice of public hearings in a newspaper of general circulation within certain timeframes. And each of those things are different for P&Z and then for city council. You are not required, however, to require that signage be posted on the property indicating that the property is subject to a zoning change. But a lot of cities like to have that in there so that people that are driving by will know that that property is subject to being changed, that someone's going to be using it for something different than what it's already being used for. Like I said, you can strike the signage on the property requirement if you want to, but that's an operational choice. It just seems to me to be something that would make a lot of sense. You know, that's for public disclosure. I mean, you can get more, most people are going to see a sign on a piece of property than they are going to see an advertisement in the newspaper, you know? Sure. Thank you.
Well, believe it or not, I've only got one more question for you.
Oh, my.
I know, right?
Well, you only have one. I don't know if anybody else does.
Well, I mean, I've gone through this pretty close. Well, I was just looking at the definition for dwelling unit, and I don't think it has any particular. It's just under section 15.2.
Page 6.
And page 14 of this one, but this is your red line edit one, so it's going to have different pages than you, I think.
Dwelling unit is defined as a building or a portion thereof designed exclusively for residential occupancy, including one dwellings or units that may be designated as,
Dingle family.
I don't know what a dingle family is.
Yeah.
But it didn't
Noticed
get
that.
picked up by spell check. I passed spell check, right?
Dingle instead
You
of
know
single.
the old Dingle family? Well, that wasn't the main question there. I did notice that. That was
It's supposed to be
funny.
single family, not dingle family.
Right, I got you. For the multifamily dwelling, I understand multifamily dwelling, I don't know if it's defined here, is most of the time like up to 4 families, but I wanted to be sure that we could edit this if we want, because I don't know if I would want a 4-family dwelling. That starts to get pretty big. So, do we have authorization to restrict that? To say,
This is simply a definition.
Right.
When you read, for example, the SFE zoning regulations, it will refer to dwelling units in that regulation, but it will specify single-family dwelling.
okay.
If
so-
if this definition said multifamily dwellings including 50-unit apartment buildings, no one would be able to build a 50-unit apartment building under our existing regulations. This is just a definition. That makes
Gotcha.
sense?
So, okay, just wanted to make sure this definition wasn't tied to anything that explicitly allows this.
No, it's not, it doesn't create a loophole, if that's what you're asking.
Pretty much, yes. Perfect, well, if it isn't, I mean, I just saw, single-family dwelling that's used. It also is limited to 1 residential dwelling. For example, in SFE, that definition, it says, density is restricted to 1 residential dwelling. So that doesn't tie back to this and say a residential dwelling could be a multifamily dwelling with 4 families, maybe more.
Yeah, looking at the definitions on page 3, SFE, it just as an example, provides for residential use and development on large lots. Density is limited to 1 residential dwelling per lot. I guess that should mean 1 single-family residential dwelling, but in the AR district, 7.2.1, single-family residential use. In the SFE district, 1 residential dwelling per lot. Single-family residential use in 8.2.1.
Right.
In 9.2, was supposed to be 9.2.1 that Mike picked up on, it's only 8.2, it's single-family residential use. And so, although the dwelling is defined as anything that anybody can live in, regardless of the number of units, each of the permissible zoning categories only allows single-family residential use. We can, if you want, we can shore it up and make it crystal clear, but I think it's already pretty clear in the regulations.
All right. Well, should we go back then, and for the ones that say limited to 1 residential dwelling, just say, 1 single-family residential dwelling, like it says in other areas?
But we could shore up the definition and just say dwelling unit only means single-family, but that,
I think the comfort level would be much better on
all
that,
right,
probably.
you can do that.
Okay.
I can put single-family dwellings only, and multifamily is prohibited. Just so that I know, let me bounce this off of y'all. In most cities, single-family dwelling includes duplex dwellings. Multifamily is considered 3 or more. I don't know if you guys want to consider single-family to be duplex and single-family, or just single-family.
We have a
Yes,
few
that's not- yeah.
duplexes in town, but not many.
Right.
I was going to say, you probably don't have that many if you got any at all.
Maybe we can strike the multi for now and then talk about the duplexes some other time.
So I'll revise dwelling units to refer to single-family only, if that's,
Yeah, they do.
And on family, it says one or more persons related by blood, marriage, or adoption, or a group not to exceed 4 persons, not all related by blood or marriage.
Yeah, you don't want to go there.
Okay.
That definition has been the subject of zoning cases
I
in the
imagine.
U.S. Supreme Court and federal courts as well as state courts for decades. It is really, really hard to get around that.
Okay.
This is a really basic definition. If something happens that doesn't strictly comply, we're going to be more organic with how we apply our regulations, if that makes sense.
It does.
So, not for you, David, necessarily, but just to kind of express my thoughts, this relates a little bit to what Lewis said. Under farm, ranch, or orchard, just below, the last sentence says, farm, ranch, or orchard use shall not cause a hazard to health by reason of unsanitary conditions and shall not be offensive by reasons of odors, dust, fumes, noise, or vibrations, or to be otherwise detrimental to public welfare. Just my own personal concern, because I think Terrell is using this along 34 to get rid of some of the ag stuff, is, who gets to decide what's offensive? We can't hold a little meter up and measure something and say it's offensive, right? It's an opinion. So your cows may be kicking up a bunch of dust. I just moved from California. That's offensive to me because it's getting all over my, Lamborghini or whatever I've got out there. So I think that stuff like that worries me. I see the reason for it. I mean, if it truly is a health hazard, like people are dying because of a disease, your cattle lot is festering is one thing. But, when I see words like offensive, I'm like, whose measure? What stick are we using? Because I drive my tractors up and down the road, and I have cows and dust and dirt and make hay, and I'm sure at some point somebody around me is going to get offended by that.
Sure.
And so,
There
I don't know how you deal with that, but those things like that worry me a little bit.
I understand. There are lots of standards, lots of legal standards that are tied to objective goals, if you will. For example, negligence. If you're involved in a car accident, you're at fault if you're negligent, and negligence is broadly defined as failure to exercise that degree of care that would be exercised by an ordinary prudent person under the same circumstances. They're broad definitions. If you read it, you get the idea about what it is intended to prohibit and prevent. The ultimate definition or the ultimate ruling on it is going to come when a judge or a jury says that use is offensive after hearing all the evidence in a case-by-case basis. So we want to prohibit, I believe, offensive uses of real estate. We can't, it's almost impossible to impose objective criteria like, sound decibel meters, radar devices to determine speed kind of thing. For these kinds of things, it can only be a broad standard. Same thing if we had a nuisance ordinance, a noise ordinance. It would be tied to the same kind of thing, that which would be offensive to neighbors or persons of reasonable sensibilities. There's no other way to do it.
So that's actually what I'll jump off on, because this same phrasing was in a different section of the original document we have, and we decided to strike it because we thought it seems more sensible to write a noise ordinance if we want a noise ordinance, or, any other sort of smell ordinance. I don't know what those are all called. But we didn't want to slip one in, to zoning.
I understand.
Can't we just strike that and, have a dedicated ordinance that maybe sets up some stronger definitions so people don't arbitrarily say they don't like Mr. Jaffe's farm stuff?
Are you worried about that, or?
All right, so I guess my concern would be if somebody,
anything.
I'm not worried about it now, but if somebody builds right next to one of the properties that I own, and they are offended by screaming cows when I haul the babies off, or they're, offended by my spraying chemicals at night or something, the noise and the headlights and whatever. I don't know. It seems like it's sort of a moving rule of sorts, because today everybody is happy with it, but if any one of those neighbors changes out,
That
for a
doesn't mean
sale
that the neighbor's going to be correct or the neighbor's going to win. It just means that there's an issue that can be argued in court.
people move next to airports all day long and then sue the airport because it's making noise, right? And that's absurd.
Or go to city councils and complain to the city council about it as if the council could do something about it. I've seen that hundreds of times.
Yeah.
All right, so if you want to strike that last sentence altogether,
Well, I don't know whether that's right or wrong. I just raised it as that's just a personal concern, because
Right.
we want a farm thing, but we're more likely to become less farm over time, and that's going to want to push farm out, and I don't know how we protect that.
So the example that I would give you as a contrary point of view would be if somebody
purchase property next door to yours and then set up a pig farm. You would have absolutely no reason to prevent them from doing that. If the zoning regulations had a provision like this in there, that gives you an argument. Doesn't mean that you're going to prevail, but it gives you an argument to complain about it. But I don't disagree with the fact that this probably should be in a nuisance ordinance. There's nothing wrong with having it in your zoning regulations at all, but if you want to take it out, you can, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, I would. There was the will of the
I
research
mean, I
group,
guess
and I do think we need to look into it, like
So
Mr.
how do-
Cernock suggested, but we don't want to, slip it in. And this would only apply for farm and ranch. A business could come up and start, dumping waste, or maybe they're,
But they might be noisy
yeah, I mean,
or
that's,
stinky.
Well, I
that's
just
why
know
we'll have to
that-
be careful if we're going to do anything like that. Well, we don't want a taxidermy shop, dumping bodies out back or anything crazy. I mean, it happens.
Well,
It does.
so say this happened in between time when this council has been very clear that they didn't want to pass a noise ordinance. So what if there was something we'd have absolutely no recourse? And so it's not just, about Mr. Jaffe's wishes. Is there any other council member comment on this? I mean,
Well, perhaps I can pose a middle ground. What if we just struck from the "and shall not be offensive by reasons of odor, dust," and keep going, so that we include farm, ranch, or acre shall not cause a hazard to health by reason of unsanitary conditions? Keep that, strike the rest. So that way it's not so arbitrary, it has to do with health, but it's a little less restrictive.
I mean, I think to your point, and to Lewis's point, I don't have anything against pigs, but I've never had to live next to them, so maybe it would be a mess if I had a bunch next to me. But I don't want to set up, and this is kind of a weird puzzle to solve, because anything we do is likely to bite somebody else, right? So how do we kind of mediate between the two? And it's like, if you could put some magic words, and like you say, by a reasonable group of farmers, it's not determined to be, but, you can't do that, so I don't know.
It's going to be by a jury of your peers.
Right.
But we can strike that. Right now, my notes indicate striking that last phrase. And unless somebody insists on having it in there, my suggestion would be that at some point down the road, you all consider some nuisance regulations.
I mean, this doesn't stomp on people's right to restrict deeds and do other things.
No, not at all.
well, I'm kind of with Simeon on this. Is if there's an unsanitary condition, I think it behooves us as a municipality to, God, you hear all these kind of things on the news. If there's someone who is sadly, inhumanely not taking care of their animals, for instance, or their livestock on the property, what is our best recourse on that?
Yeah, you can call the county for that. We don't have nuisance ordinances or nuisance regulations on the books. You guys do need to think about doing that at some point down the road, just coming up with broad brush stuff. These are zoning regulations. They're really not supposed to be regulating nuisances. However,
Right.
if you did have a farm or a ranch or an orchard that did violate that provision and did not therefore fit within the definition, then you're talking about a zoning violation, not a nuisance one. The difference is that a zoning violation can carry a penalty of up to $2,000, and you can sue for injunctive relief if you had to. So I'm okay with having it in here. I'm okay with taking it out as well, whatever you guys want to do.
So I think what Simeon was saying is strike the last part of it and just say, shall not cause a hazard to health by reason of the unsanitary conditions, and then just strike the rest of it, because, I think we all want health and safety for our citizens, or we should.
Yeah, just,
But
in this
maybe-
one, you're keeping it restricted. You can't have unhealthy conditions, but you can have annoying conditions, pretty much is what
Right.
it would
A
be.
hazard to health by reason of unsanitary conditions, but we're not saying just because someone doesn't like the odor,
So, Tara, as a point of order, we're only on item 1.
We are.
And we
That we
really
have the
did,
attorney
not
here.
that this isn't a public hearing, I agree with what David said, but I think I've heard several times from council that we're definitely not voting on this tonight, and probably not next month, and maybe not the month after that. It's going to take a while. Kind of to answer Tom's earlier question, one of the things I would encourage is that we schedule at least one workshop in the foreseeable future, and we allow citizen input at the workshop, which we can legally do. We haven't before, but we can do that, so that we can discuss it, because I think we've plowed through a lot of good ground tonight, but we're not going to get to a finished product, and we've got other things we need to.
So is there any council member who has some burning question for our attorney?
All right, so
Okay.
let's do this. I've got some indications for some changes here, but before I start making piecemeal changes, you guys do have a long way to go. And so what I'm going to suggest is that if you do workshop this, and you have subsequent meetings, and you do get tons of public input, and hopefully you will, you guys come up with a redraft to highlight your revisions and then send the entire document to me, and I'll spend another weekend taking care of it. Does that make sense?
Well, I volunteered to do that.
Okay.
I'll make all the edits.
You're
Yeah,
the-
I'm on
you're the
top.
man.
I'm passionate about this. I mean, I won't volunteer myself for much of these long ordinances, but this one, I mean, that's why I'm up here.
Well, I got you. All right, so y'all understand that this is an attempt to strike a balance between nominal government regulation and then making sure that the goals of the community are met. You want a rural lifestyle, and in order to do that, you have to have regulations. So somewhere there's a balance in there that you guys got to find.
Well, and to that point, and I shared this with somebody, I think with you, Tara, the other day, I worked in customer service for many years, building successful customer service organizations, and one of the things I figured out pretty quickly, and others in the industry have too, is people like to be heard. And even if you're about to violate whatever they believe in or want, if you at least give them an opportunity to speak their mind and speak their piece. So I'm carrying that belief into this whole zoning conversation. If we will give people an opportunity to share their hearts, share their concerns, share their minds, then when we come around to doing something that stomps on their feet, at least they know they were listened to. And I would want us to do that. I would not want us to ever pass something like this without listening. We're not going to be able to solve it for everybody. Somebody's going to leave happy, somebody's going to leave mad, but everybody should leave feeling heard, that wanted to be heard. Now, we're not going to go pull them out of their armchair. If they don't come out and say something, it's their fault, but at least the ones that want to, so.
That's what
So is
democracy
one-
is all about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen.
So, and as one former council member said, that if men were angels, we wouldn't need any government. But so we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Going to resume. The time is now 8:43. Our record of short meetings has already been broken.
It's a big.
It is a big topic. You're right. Okay, so we're going on to item number.
Wait, do we want to finish this one? Do we want to
Well, I think.
set an expectation for what we're going to do next?
Well, I think we've already discussed that we, I think if Councilmember White wants to take some of the things we discussed, I guess he can consult with Attorney Berman on that and
Yeah.
keep me in the loop.
I haven't been on the
Absolutely.
forum lately, Simeon. Do we have this on the forum?
We do. We have my original copy and Mr. Berman's edits, and I would advise anybody, don't even look at my copy. Look at
So why
Mr.
don't we
Berman's. That's gonna
send
be
our stuff
closest.
that way? That way we're not in violation of open meetings. We can just send it to the forum.
Absolutely, I would agree with that.
People can kind of witness the process, but you can also gather all the information from there.
And there's some things I know we haven't agreed on, such as the title. So only things that we've absolutely all agreed on. I'll make edits, probably send them over to Mr. Berman. He can clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up, and we can post it on the forum. Or
Well,
should
you
we?
could even put all the possible titles up there.
Well,
just to
in a
kinda
workshop,
remind
we
us.
aren't able to make any changes, so, but we can make amendments that are a consensus, can we not? And then we come to this document that's been tweaked here and there, but we haven't finally adopted it. So we have to come to the table and make some amendments, we'll get nowhere.
Well,
So,
and the workshop can precede a regular meeting. It can be the hour or two before the meeting, and then we can go into the meeting and do actionable stuff. But we can
Also-
take citizen input, write it down, and then go back and edit the document accordingly if we.
And to my knowledge, from the way I read the law on it, we can't take any sort of vote like, hey, how do y'all like this name for the document on the public forum or anything, and then 3 people say yes and we change it. We can't do that, right? Because that's kind of a vote. Okay, just making sure.
okay, so I believe there's a consensus that we'll just bring this back next time. And Attorney Berman, are you available next month, September 21st?
going to Thursdays.
We've gone to Thursdays starting in September. Okay. All right, I think we'll need your input. Okay, I think with that said, I think we should go ahead and move on. We have another important topic, item 2. Discuss and take action on interlocal 1445 agreement. So this is just Kaufman County, and this has to do with the property in our ETJ, or extraterritorial jurisdiction. So I think last time we discussed, I think there was some concern that we would lose something by signing this. You would lose the ability to have an input in our ETJ, and I think so. I think in the highlight here, number 1A it says renew every year. That was an amendment we discussed, and then a number 6A. Just striking, Kaufman County shall use its best effort to comply with this provision. However, failure to comply shall not affect the validity of any subdivision plat. So it just is saying, look, we want to be notified within 30 days after receipt of completed application. We don't want it to just fall through the cracks.
And I guess I had the question in the last meeting was, I was understanding you were saying that we needed to have this, and so my question is why? Can you explain why do we need to have this, or what are the consequences if we don't have this?
Chapter 242 of the Texas Local Government Code.
Sorry?
Can you speak is your mic on? We're trying to save the batteries, I guess. Is the battery dead?
Is it working now?
There we go.
Chapter 242 of the Texas Local Government Code, which is the codification of House Bill 1445, requires cities and counties to have these agreements that cover ETJ territories. We're required by law to have it. I don't know what the consequences are because the statute doesn't say so. So in theory, I mean, it's not that we're going to get punished by going to jail, but in theory, someone could sue for mandamus and compel the county and the town to get together and hammer out an agreement. But we are required by law to have this. State law provides for 4 different options, and we're selecting the one that gives the county exclusive authority over subdivision regulation. What's more common in larger cities is the city will have exclusive authority over subdivision regulation, but we don't have any subdivision regulations. And I got to say, Kaufman County's subdivision regulations are a little bit stronger than any other county I've ever seen.
It's 170 pages.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Kaufman County's subdivision regulation. They require building permits.
Yeah.
So, we can tweak this, assuming that the county will agree to it. But we do have to have one of these.
And do we also have to have one with Hunt County?
Yes. If we have ETJ in Hunt County, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Wait,
Well, on
do
the
we
table is Kaufman County, so we're going to try and, address this elephant one bite at a time.
Let's hammer this one out first
Yes.
before we
Yeah,
tackle
but,
the next
I
one.
mean, just to clarify so we know what to go for the future, do we have ETJ in Rockwall? I heard that a couple times at one
Yes.
point.
We have a sliver.
That's how I'm reacting right now.
Hey, it's
So
a
we have to
first.
get 3 different
Yes.
ordinances. Oh, boy.
There's a sliver.
Unless it get worse.
Well, we don't have 4.
Yeah. So back to the edits, Tara, so, because I was looking at the one that Simeon or somebody had, so, section 6, we are going to strike the last sentence, Kaufman County shall use its best efforts to comply. Failure to comply shall not affect the validity of any subdivision plat. We're going to take that out.
Can we do that?
You can take out whatever you want, assuming the county will agree to it, but I would strongly urge you not to remove that last sentence.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, it's just one of the suggestions from somebody else, so.
Yeah, no.
I wouldn't want them to use that as a loophole to say, we tried to call you, but your phone was busy, so we went ahead and approved the 1,000 home development,
I'm not concerned as much with the relationship between the town and the county as I am with the ability of someone to submit a plat application that doesn't comply with regulations and then sneak by it because of some technical or procedural defect. The plat review and approval process is strictly regulated. State law mandates that a plat application, once filed, must be approved within 30 days or must be denied within 30 days. If it's not approved within that time frame, if it's not denied within that time frame, it is automatically approved by operation of law. So I think it's a really not good idea to do something that might in some way be used by a developer as a loophole or a handle to contest the approval or disapproval of their plat. They already have all the rights.
But you said two things that make me feel better about that. One, you have confidence in Kaufman's subdivision regulations, that they're very rigid, but also that you have confidence in the process.
Yes.
And how it's conducted.
Yeah, they're tough. I mean, seriously, they are. I mean, they require building permits, which no other
I don't know
county does.
what it would benefit Kaufman to sneak a subdivision into Poetry. I mean, we're in their county, so they don't want that junk out here anyway, so, necessarily.
So on that 6A, what is your suggestion, just to leave it alone? Okay.
Yeah, unless you guys wanted to adopt your own set of subdivision regulations and assume exclusive authority.
We don't even have a zoning regulation. I don't think we're anywhere near.
You're miles away from that.
The ability to do subdivision regulation. No, one day, but we have to, baby steps. We have to get first things first, and we're nowhere ready to get a subdivision regulation.
Backing up to 1A, are we changing that to 1 year or leaving it 2 years?
I'd say
It doesn't
1 year.
matter.
What is your thought on that, David?
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's terminable at will on 90 days' notice, so if you don't like what's going on, you can terminate it and then renegotiate.
Okay.
Anytime.
Anytime you want.
Yeah.
90 days' notice will terminate the agreement. So all those other things really don't make that much of a difference.
So we can say 2 years and redo it in a month. I mean, we can do it whenever we want, so.
So it doesn't, it's really neither here nor there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can do 1 year if you want, but you don't have to if you don't want to. It's not going to be consequential.
Well, why don't we just leave the 2 year then, so
Yeah,
that.
2 years, it's less work on the council. If they need to fix it, they can fix it whenever they want.
Yeah.
Minor issue on the page 5. It talks about addressed, all notices required to be given by virtue of this agreement shall be addressed as follows, and delivered by certified mail, postage paid. Well, it doesn't have an address for the town of Poetry. It has an address for our attorney, so don't we need to spell out our, physical address or where we get mail?
That's easy. We can do that.
Okay, yeah, it
Yeah.
just seemed weird.
I have a question on page 4, number 9, the thoroughfare plan. Requires compliance with Kaufman County's thoroughfare plan.
Yeah, that was
Why are
like-
we giving that away?
And the town's thoroughfare plan.
Yeah, we're not giving that away. These are standards that they can impose in the plat review process. If a plat is filed that doesn't comply with our thoroughfare plan or the county's thoroughfare plan, then the county can deny the plat application and require the developer or the applicant to revise and refile. I have no idea what Kaufman County's thoroughfare plan is, but I assume that they have one, and I
They
assume
do.
that they're going to
Oh,
want
they
to have
do.
one.
Oh, they do.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, and the way that it works in most instances, and the reason why compliance with thoroughfare plans is required is because more often than not, a lot of circumstances, the plat application process will require that the developer dedicate certain land to the city or to the county to be used for street widening purposes. So, for example, if someone submitted a plat application to develop a tract of land and the county's thoroughfare plan showed that a street was going right through the middle of it, the county could require the developer or the property owner to dedicate that thoroughfare, that strip, to the county for street purposes. And the county would not have to pay for it and would not otherwise have to go through a condemnation process.
So for clarification, this is a requirement for developers, not a requirement for, we have to be, good boys and follow whatever the Kaufman says with their thoroughfare, right?
This is what Kaufman County will impose on applicants in the plat review process.
Right, not
Okay.
what they're imposing on Poetry, but on the applicant.
Well, good, they should impose that. Impose everything.
And having dealt with Kaufman County leadership, I think they are concerned about having, just seeing their concern is they want to have a little bit of say into, in the extraterritorial jurisdictions to be able to say, hey, we want it to be above board and have good standards. We want it to we don't want it to be substandard. And so I think their document, the care with which they have their document says that as well. Anyway. All right, so.
The interesting thing of this to me, and I guess somebody was sharing with me it's already that way, is that I think we kind of run around thinking, if I want to put up a house or a barn or whatever, I can just put it up. It's on me. But in Kaufman County, you now have to get permits, you have to get inspections, you have to meet code, even if it's in the middle of nowhere, which is that's just strange, I guess.
They're tough. But does anyone do it? It just started.
Well, if you don't do it, you get caught, you can get into trouble. So
Yeah.
we're like becoming like the big city. You're not going to be able to change your own water heater soon because you'll need a permit. And,
Well, that's just Kaufman County. Hunt County seems to be a lot more relaxed. So there's a good and bad to that. It's good when your neighbor's doing something you don't want,
but
but
I
it's
think
not
they
good.
can already do that. I don't think us passing this has anything to do. They already have that authority. So this isn't going to add to it. It just,
This could change that.
in what way?
If we negotiated an agreement with the county that authorized the town to enforce, for example, the county's subdivision regulations. Or if we adopted our own and our agreement provided that we would enforce our own subdivision regulations in our ETJ. It won't apply within our city limits. We impose whatever regulations
Right.
we want. We're just talking about territory in the ETJ, not in the county, in the unincorporated areas.
But by signing a document like this, are we surrendering some amount of authority over the ETJ that we might want to consider keeping?
We don't have anything to keep right now.
Okay.
Yes, the answer to the question is yes,
But the state requires it.
we got nothing to keep. We don't have subdivision regs.
So.
And until we come up with our own, we have no other recourse. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and at some point down the road, over time, when you guys do adopt subdivision regulations, then you will want to renegotiate with the county. You'll exercise your 90-day termination clause provision, and you will require all ETJ plat applications to be filed with the town, assuming that state law still allows us to do that.
Well, theoretically, if we like Hunt's subdivision regulation better, can't we just take it and say it's our subdivision ordinance now and apply it across the board?
We could, but who's going to enforce it? Who's going to review a plat application? I got to tell you, the review of a plat application, even simple ones, are complicated. And it requires the application of a number of different disciplines. You got to be familiar with drainage. You got to know what the road requirements are, what street construction standards are. You got to know. You need an engineer and sometimes a lawyer. It depends on the nature of the plat, but it's complicated and difficult, and we don't have enough people to do that work right now.
But this agreement, we're saying subdivision, but this doesn't just apply to subdivisions, does it? Doesn't this apply to all construction and all?
It says fire code, building permits, on-site sewage,
It
your
sounds like
septic,
it's,
the
not just high
floodplain, driveway,
density,
culverts, 911 addressing, and county property. It's defaulting to them anyway. It is. It's defaulting to
Well,
them
and I know
anyway.
it may be a non-issue, but I don't think it's just subdivisions. I think this is like any construction that happens in the ETJ, including driveways, is under the jurisdiction.
That's why I was saying Kaufman County's tough. Most counties don't regulate that kind of stuff. They impose building permit
Yeah,
requirements.
they do.
Holy cow. The agreement does give you guys some input in the process, but I don't know how much input you really want to have in this kind of thing, because it's dangerous, and once an application is plugged into the pipeline, things have to happen really, really fast. Delays are consequential, seriously consequential.
So if it's delayed, say we wanted to take on more and it's delayed, then they automatically get in. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Is that what you just said?
If Kaufman County does not does not deny a plat application within 30 days of its filing, it's automatically approved by operation of law. Understand how complicated that gets when a plat is approved by operation of law that doesn't comply with any other county or local regulation.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
want
and
that
it
to
becomes
happen.
really difficult to navigate that, you know. But the plat approval process is extremely strict. Every session, the legislature adopts more and more requirements that make it more and more difficult to review, evaluate, and deny a plat application.
And again, so the subdivision ordinance is for development. And so having a more strict code for development, is that not in line with our comprehensive plan?
Yeah, understand
wanna
that
keep it rural.
subdivision regulations apply when somebody subdivides a tract of land, not when they want to build a barn on their property, but when they want to subdivide a tract of land. These regulations kick in when somebody deeds half of their land to somebody else, or wants to cut their land up so that they can sell off different lots. Everything else is counties, I mean, Kaufman County does a lot more than I think it probably should, but this only, from our perspective, will only kick in when someone subdivides their property.
So minor little wordsmithing aside, and I think we've gone to none of that now. I mean, what is your legal recommendation to the council with regard to passing this document tonight or at some point?
Number one, you don't have a choice. You have to have an agreement. Number two, Kaufman County is as good as it gets in terms of relinquishing your regulatory authority over subdivision regulations in your ETJ. My recommendation is that you approve this agreement.
Okay, we have some input.
So would it behoove the council to study the subdivision ordinances perhaps of Kaufman County and be familiar with it, or?
If you want to. Feel free.
Well, I mean, if we're
Run out
gonna,
of books to read.
if we're gonna, if our citizens are subject to that, I feel like we should, maybe.
It never hurts for you to be familiar with the regulations that your citizens and ETJ residents are going to be controlled by.
And then, is it a problem if Kaufman County residents of Poetry are subject to that, and yet Hunt County not so much?
What do you mean?
I mean, if they're less stringent or they're less.
The Hunt County is less stringent,
it
apparently.
Well, we don't control that, that's the county.
But we don't, the county, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like it was before we were incorporated, is, you know, that's,
Yeah, the same regulations have always applied anyway.
Mm.
Yeah, Tara, you're right, absolutely correct. These are the regulations that applied before y'all incorporated.
We may have some
So
people
you
sliding
say
down
that
the
these are
road.
pretty restrictive, but Citizen Cernock was talking about that land that was subdivided beside his daughter's house. Those were subdivisions that allowed all the complaints that he's complaining about right now.
but didn't you say they just made them more
That's for
stringent?
building a house. Like I have to go get a permit. If you're in Kaufman County now, you have to go get a permit to build a single-family dwelling. What he's talking about, that property was replatted, so therefore it went through their processes, and they applied that code to what he's complaining about.
I recognize his complaints. It's truly unfortunate, but those issues have nothing to do with the subdivision review and approval process. I mean, all that has to do with are the regulations that deal with how you cut up your property and what you do in connection with streets and drainage and things like that. It has nothing to do with the use of the property.
So without us writing our own 160-page document,
We ain't gonna do that.
we ain't doing that. We have no other option.
We ain't gonna be
We
doing that.
really don't have another option. Okay, let's hear from citizens. Patrick Smith? If you want to speak, can you please do us the courtesy of getting in the seats? That would help us streamline things. Thank you. And remember to say your name and address, please.
Patrick Smith, 18730 FM 1565. This proposed interlocal agreement, when was it first drafted?
I'm not sure.
Was it like 2 years ago?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, and I couldn't hear very well at the last meeting, but I thought there was some reference to Patricia Adams, and she drafted it, so that would have been a long time ago. Is that not correct?
I think Deborah Bonner may have helped draft it with the attorney,
With
perhaps.
Patricia?
And I don't want to say for sure. I'm not sure. I don't
Okay.
know.
So as you sit here tonight, you can't say how long the town's been in possession of the draft of the interlocal
Well,
agreement?
just recently, Attorney Berman, in the last, couple months, had said, you guys really need to do this. I'm like, oh, yeah, we do. And so we had we sent it to Deborah Bonner. They approved their end of it, and so now it's before us.
Okay. But you don't know when the first draft was done. Is that still your answer?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Does the current draft of the interlocal 1445 agreement still require, by agreement with the town of Poetry, that Kaufman County will apply their highest standards to roads in the ETJ?
I think that's what it says.
Okay.
Yep.
And we already have telegraphed to the town an indication at least that Hunt County's not going to do anything like that. Is that correct?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. And we know that the existing roads in the town of Poetry don't comply with the highest standards for roads in Kaufman County. So isn't this going to kind of put the people in the ETJ at a disadvantage and a financial burden?
You made an assumption that I'm not ready to agree with, so.
What effect, if any, will interlocal 1445 agreement have on Senate Bill number 2038, and specifically the amendments made to Section 42 of the Local Government Code?
Nothing.
So what are we doing here tonight?
That's kind of a loaded question that I don't think we're prepared to answer or discuss this evening. That's a huge topic that we
Counselor,
can't
the
talk about.
item is discuss and take action on this thing. So I think tonight's the night to talk about it, don't you think?
This is not scheduled as an executive session. I'm happy to call one if the council wants to, but whether residents in our ETJ have the ability to opt out of our ETJ has nothing to do with whether the town should consider or reject this proposed agreement. It's a big subject.
So the,
I'm sorry,
thank you. Oh, I
Patrick,
know
your
you're
time
very
is
sorry.
up.
All right, thank you.
Shelley Smith?
So have we gotten any word from Hunt County on the agreement with them?
Not yet.
Not yet. No word. Has anybody approached Hunt County looking for this agreement?
Yes.
And they have not responded at all?
They have not responded. It might be going through their system, which takes a while.
So this agreement affects only Kaufman County and not Hunt County. And you guys are going to vote on this to affect Kaufman County, and you don't even know what's in Hunt County's thing. And 5 of you live in Hunt County. 1 of you lives in Kaufman County. That sounds really, really inappropriate.
Thank you, Shelley. So we are, by state law, we have to either make our own subdivision ordinance, as has been stated, or we have to go in line with the Kaufman County, apparently Hunt County, and additionally, now that we recognize the Rockwall County. So it's up to the county, because we don't have our own, and we're not in a position to create our own at this juncture. Do we want to be in compliance? I think with state law, I think so. Brian Vincent?
Brian Vincent, 5937 County Road 323. It was an interesting discussion. It brought a couple more things to light. But this new agreement does expire annually, which it's improvement, but the 90-day thing still, it gives us an out even if we wanted to do that. So I'm fine with that renewal. I did notice that there was a change to the notice of the plat in paragraph 6A. The stricken sentence does not help the town retain any authority over its jurisdiction. I'd still like to see something stating that the town must be consulted before a plat can be approved by the county, and now I understand the process a little better. So if the town has to be consulted, I'm not saying that the town has approval, but just so that we can know what's going on in our own, literally in our own backyards. And so perhaps we could put into the agreement that if by the 29th day of the plat being proposed, the county or the town has not been notified or consulted, then it's automatically denied. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if that's binding. Okay.
It's a
But-
good idea. I wish that we could do that.
But I want to look for any way that the town can still be notified. I mean, right now, right here is about 312 feet from the road out here, and the county could drop a Section 8 housing in here if they approved it, and we wouldn't even have to know, especially if we strike that sentence, because, again, they implicitly had to tell us, and now we're explicitly scratching that, saying, oh, well, they don't have to tell us anymore, because there's no ramification either way. But also, Appendix A has still not been made available for public review. I don't know if it's been made available for council review. So that since it's explicitly incorporated in this agreement, then I don't see how it can be voted on.
I think Appendix A is the map of the town, and now that we have had a volunteer annexation, we need to modify the map, but the map maker has had surgery and is unavailable, so.
And I understand the situation there, but right now, so we know we do not have a current and correct item that would go into Appendix A. And so it would be difficult, if I were still in Mr. Blake's seat, it would be difficult for me to vote to approve something that I know is not current and correct. But, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. To that point, Attorney Berman, so we had our volunteer annexation that was added about 1/3 of an acre to our town. The map does need to be modified to reflect that change.
Yes.
So we don't have an engineer. The engineering, well, I don't want to get too off on a tangent. We don't have currently do not have an engineer. So the Dorothy Dillon GISS could make that modification fairly easily. She has all the backup records, and she's done the current map. And so once she is recovered and able to do that, that would be our appendix, I believe, for this.
Okay.
Okay, so
I want to speak of that, though, because the reason we decided to hire an engineer was because of the multiple maps that have been flying around and misused over the last 2 years. So I, for one, as a council member, do not want another map from Dorothy Dillon going to a legal document with the county. Until we can get an engineered stamp of the town, I don't want another map that's going to come back and haunt us.
well, that's your opinion as far as haunting. I mean,
Well, it's came up over and over and over. Until we get a
By the same
stamp
few
on that
people.
map, we don't know what's official.
so the map that we have been, we don't have an engineer right now. So I have sent out the approved document that we signed to an engineering firm. They did not accept, so we have to go down and try and, that's a process. We don't have that. So Attorney Berman, what is your legal recommendation on that?
Do we know that Kaufman County doesn't already have a map? Exhibit A is supposed to delineate the ETJ of poetry. Most counties already have that information. I know that Hunt County would certainly have it. I don't know if Kaufman County
It's in
does.
our appraisal district has it, because it's online.
Well, the appraisal district may not necessarily show where the ETJ boundaries of cities are.
Oh, yeah.
County maps, the county probably already has. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to
I
guess.
did reach out to Deborah, I did reach out to Deborah and ask her for that, but I haven't heard from her, so.
Most counties, I know that Hunt does, Dallas County does, I think Tarrant County as well, but the maps that the counties already maintain will show ETJ areas. They kind of need to for county purposes anyway.
I don't know if that land edit's gonna change our ETJ, now that I'm thinking about it, because it was on the inside of a bubble. So, since it was on the inside of ETJ already, I don't think it's gonna extend it, if you know what I mean, if I'm remembering the map right. I don't think it's gonna change the ETJ.
It's I guess technically it subtracts 1/3 of an acre from the ETJ, because it's now in the town.
I think the ETJ, now correct me if I'm wrong, but this would affect what's in the town proper too, right?
This agreement will only apply to regulations that apply within our ETJ, not within our town limits.
Outside the town.
So not the 311 feet?
Only whatever is within our ETJ, half a mile of our borders.
So the GISS map maker who did the original map and has the current map that's online is the one that we've been using for 2.5 years. In order to, if the county needs the addition of the voluntary annexation, which happened last time, would it be acceptable legally to have the GISS specialist modify the map for this particular document?
At our expense or at the county's expense? Why don't you ask the county if they have the map? That way you guys don't have to pay for it. If we annex new territory and it expands our ETJ, we simply provide.
And they
notice
were
to the county.
given the information.
Yeah, so they rely on Kaufman County to put together the exhibit.
In full transparency, this is a blatant disregard for council's vote to have a new map made by an engineer after the annexation was made.
Different, you're comparing apples and oranges. The county may already have a map that.
But if they don't, and we're going to generate another map.
For the purposes of a 1445 agreement, if the county already has a map, then why don't we just look at that and make sure it's correct and rely on that? We don't have to spend the money to create an exhibit to this document if the county already has it. You do need to have an official map of your town boundaries. If you currently have one and you want to make changes to it, then the council can make changes to that. But if the map is not correct or deficient and you want to amend it or revise it or make it more accurate, yeah, absolutely you can do it. But that's for your own purposes and for zoning purposes and regulatory purposes and everything that the town needs it for. It has nothing to do with it. Well, it's only tangentially related to a 1445 agreement.
And it may be the reason she wasn't able to answer is because if they're still in the process of modifying that, it takes time.
Yeah, you don't have a deadline on that.
So
We don't have a deadline.
We have more public comment on this?
I think we have Herbert Fletcher. Okay, he's passing. Kevin Sinkovich, pass. Robin Followill.
Robin Follow, 10658 County Road 2400. So back to what Terry was asking, because we did not get a definite answer. If the county doesn't happen to have a copy of the map, then we do need one that would be engineered to be official.
An official.
An official.
We need a map of our ETJ for the purposes of this agreement. The county might have one. If they don't, then we'll use ours. Right. Does that answer the question?
I mean, the point was before the reason why that got pushed about having an engineer do it, because like Terry said, we had multiple maps going all over the place. Some of us feel that it has to do with the person is a kind of a conflict of an interest, but as a city, why wouldn't we just, to be official, if the county doesn't have a copy of it, to do an engineer map, so it is an official map done?
That is the goal.
You got to have one.
That is.
No, I understand
That
we
is
do
the
have to have
goal.
one.
It is the goal.
My goal is, what I'm
Just
asking
like-
is if the county doesn't have it, why would we not go ahead and have an engineer do it so it's officially done by a professional person and it's done the correct official way, not just someone that works there that's GIS and make it up for the
A
convenience?
GIS specialist goes through a three-year training program. They're not just nilly-willy doing a Google map.
Yeah, I think there's an issue of version control and other things,
Thank you.
right?
That's exactly what we're kind of
Wanna make
pointing
sure
out.
it's like,
There's a version
On this
control.
day, Bob put his seal on it, and this is the official map, and others can't like appear out of thin air.
Correct. Thank you. That was the point I was making.
Well, you could hire an engineer or a surveyor to do that.
Yeah, well, all they're doing is blessing a survey and a bunch of GIS coordinates, so. But somebody needs to do that that's not a member of this town that has a
Correct.
seal
That's,
and
yes, so it's not a
recognized.
kind of conflict or advantage for anybody at some point in time.
It's going to cost you more money, but sure.
It's still done fairly.
Well, it may be worth the money. I'm not saying it's not. It's just going to cost you more.
Okay, so that's all the citizen comments. So-
Tara, I guess
Yes.
to Mr. Berman's point, our suggestion is wouldn't it be appropriate to go to Deborah Bonner, who's the attorney for Kaufman County, and ask her the question Mr. Berman just asked? Do they have a map that shows our ETJ before we do anything else?
I totally agree, and I have done that. I just haven't heard back. So I guess we'll table this till next time because.
I can
Can we-
ask her. I'll send her an email tomorrow.
Okay.
Can we table this till next time?
And-
Because I understood that our legal advice was to not table this.
You shall have a 1445 agreement. I don't know what happens if you don't have one. You need to do it right, though. You don't get a whole bunch of chances to do it. And you'll understand, the county, whatever changes you guys make, the county may not agree to it, and you know that. I believe that you should be expeditious in approving a form, approving an agreement, that you should not waste time. But, if the reason for a delay is a good one, then so be it.
So, Mr. Bonner, is Deborah Bonner the correct person to ask for this? I mean, because she's not an engineer. She's just the lawyer for the county.
Deborah Bonner is with the DA's office. She's an assistant district attorney responsible for the civil division. She may not know. I mean, the first thing that I would be doing is I'd just look on their website tomorrow to see if they have a map. Dallas County's map is available online. Most counties have a GIS website that has access to all that stuff. Deborah may or may not be the right person to ask, but anybody at the county that is in the right department.
Well, since you said that way, I mean, Kaufman County does have an explicit CAD map which shows our boundaries versus the ETJ. It's all there.
So,
Well, like, yeah, I don't
doesn't
know if it shows
that
the
answer the
ETJ.
question?
So
So-
why don't we approve this contingent on the fact that Kaufman County has a map, and otherwise we table this till the next meeting? Because I don't want to not take action on it now that we know we are just deficient by law. I am not going to sit here and be responsible for us
Well,
not
yeah,
complying.
I will. So I make a motion, we table this, and it's based on confirming that we have the exhibit correctly and in the right hands and all of that. But also, the point that was brought up by someone that came up and spoke, I am intrigued and curious about Hunt County, and I hear David saying we may not be able to change anything, but it does seem a little derelict to not at least be aware of what Hunt counties might say before we do this, because we don't want to split our town and have kind of a double standard, right, or an obvious double standard. I mean, we may have little control, but I don't know. I personally would not vote to approve this tonight without seeing at least a rough draft of Hunt counties, because I don't know, and we are in a unique situation because we're in multiple counties. That I'd like to at least be able to say with a straight face, I at least read it, and it's not completely opposite.
Well, then I would charge the current council, every one of us, to, it would behoove us, if that's your stance, is we not only look at the Hunt County subdivision ordinance, but also the Rockwall County, so that we kind of have a feel for what,
Well, it's not the subdivision regulation, it's the agreement, right, that they would give us.
well, they haven't given us any, so.
In
Well,
Hunt
we'll
County,
take the county off, send this to them and say, what do you think of this? And see what they say.
I have. I mean, I did send them this
Hunt
and-
County.
with Hunt County and said, hey, what do you think?
and Tara, in Hunt County, is that Judge Stovall or somebody else?
Judge Stovall.
Okay, well, we have a live motion.
Well, first, Mr. Berman,
So-
is that a reasonable, or is that a legally defendable delay?
You don't have an exhibit to this agreement. If I were on the council, I wouldn't be comfortable approving it tonight without looking at Exhibit A. So I think it's completely reasonable to table it until the next meeting, and you get the exhibit, you get the map, and you attach it to the agreement, and you look at what Hunt County's 1445 agreements say. I don't have a problem.
Okay, so those are
Okay,
the two
perfect.
action items, is at least back to Judge Stovall again to see the timing for when they'll have a 1445 agreement. And then secondly, to go to Deborah Bonner or whoever the appropriate person is she designates to get the Kaufman County map.
Yeah, I would like that. I mean, I want to table this, don't get me wrong, but I don't.
Well-
What I want more is to not break the law. So as long as we can do it, and it sounds like we can without worrying, then.
Well, that would be my motion, is that we, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
there's a motion on.
We've already got a motion, so we can't stack them. So David, just for
Oh, I'm sorry.
clarification, Would it be reasonable to expect that in Rockwall and Hunt, because they have cities in those counties, that they have, because they are required by law also, they must have some of these documents in place?
Most 1445 agreements relegate the city with the exclusive authority over subdivision regulations.
Okay.
Okay, so I would second the motion that Mike made.
Even in
Okay, so we,
McClendon.
thank you. So we have a motion by Councilmember Jaffe, seconded by Councilmember Anderson, to table this till next meeting, to get the, hopefully the appendix or the Exhibit A, which we believe is the map. We want to have a current map, and also get information from Hunt County.
And Rockwall.
And Rockwall County. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously.
And if you need help with chasing the counties, I'll jump in with you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3, discuss and take action on the possibility of the town bearing the burden of maintaining private roads. This came about from,
Well, I'm just going to ask for, you're already giving clarification. I was going to
Okay.
ask for clarification.
yes, this came about from a citizen request last time under general comments, and so I think I had 3 council members ask for something very similar to that, and so I think that we do want to try and listen to our citizens. I did put together just an estimate. There we go. So this shows 6 private roads in our within our town border. There's Holly Creek, which is a half a mile. It's mixed of paved asphalt and gravel. It does look better than it did. It used to be on my list of one of the worst roads in the town, but it does look better. The private road 2428, it's estimated about a third of a mile. It is gravel. It seems to be fairly good condition. Private road 2427, I estimate, estimate is dirt mostly. Private road 2330, it's about a third of a mile. It's gravel. Woodland Estates, it's a little over a third of a mile. It's gravel. And Dry Creek Run, also known as 2452, is about a third of a mile. It's also gravel. We don't have a way to take care of gravel, so I don't know that as much as we might want to try and take care of some of these, I don't know that.
Well, I'll say that living on Woodland Estates for most of my life, I'll tell you that the county had reached out to us whenever I was there, and they were willing to take it over and pave it as long as we were willing to widen it to acceptable levels, and we decided to deny that. And I'd say, as I was really thinking about this and all the benefits, because I was one of the ones that requested it should be on here, and some of the risks of doing this, we do want to make sure we're being fair to our private road people by maintaining their roads, since they're paying the trash franchise fees and the sales tax, because our town border goes in there. However, it's going to be more expensive theoretically to maintain the same quality within those roads, because to my knowledge, those aren't qualified as county roads, and I don't know if the county is going to pitch in to help repair them. So it's not the same circumstance. It's going to be more expensive. So I didn't get to reach out to the county commissioner about roads or anything like that, which probably should be done to make sure they're going to help us pay for the cost of maintaining these if we're going to consider it. And if so, will the people need to first give their private roads to the county or not? Those are my thoughts on it.
Attorney, okay.
By the way, Bridge Road also is a private road, and it's in a town.
Are you sure that's in the town?
It's, yeah, it's between our property. If my property's in the town, Bridge Road's in the town, for a third mile anyway.
For a section, I'm not sure.
Well, private road 2327, at least the first 411 feet of it is in the town.
So this says burden to maintain, and I almost see it as an obligation because these citizens are paying sales tax. Tax must be used on roads, so now we're gonna charge sales tax to the people that we're not gonna repair their roads. I think we're obligated. I don't see this as a burden. The burden is we have to figure out how we must do this.
Right.
They're paying franchise fees, they're paying sales tax, and they're going to be subject to any rules we pass, but we're going to pull back and not repair the roads. Yeah, I'm waiting for you to jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to give you guys bad news, and you don't hate me for this, but you're not paying me to give you good news. I'm here to tell you what the law is and what you have to do. The reason why the county is offering to take over those roads, is offering to repair them if they can take them over, is because the county is required to do that. No political subdivision can expend public funds for private gain or private benefit. It's a constitutional prohibition. Fixing someone's road, if it's a private road, is using public funds for private gain. It's no different than using tax monies to repair someone's roof or to buy a new refrigerator for their home kind of thing. If there are multiple people that live on a private road, it is not a bad idea for those people to give that road over to the county or to the town, because what's going to happen is that once it becomes a public street, whatever political subdivision receives the dedication of the property will then be responsible for maintenance and repair in perpetuity, forever and ever. If it becomes a county road, county is responsible forever and ever. If it becomes a town road, we're responsible for fixing it forever and ever. Whenever something goes bad, we got to fix it, assuming that we have the funds for it. And what could happen in theory is you may be obligated to be fixing what used to be a private road that serves maybe 4 or 5 people, while you're foregoing the repairs of roads in other parts of town that serve a whole bunch of other people. You can't just fix a private road unless they give the property over, unless they allow the town to take it over. That's the bad news.
And what's the process for that?
The process would be either, well, we're not going to do a plat. They're just going to have to deed it to the city. I did that situation once before in another town where there was a road that had 4 people that lived on it. They didn't want to fix that road anymore, and the deal was that if they wanted the town to be responsible for road repair, they would have to dedicate that street to the town. It's a simple deed. It's an easement deed or a dedication deed. It's a simple form that gets filed with the county after they sign it. But they would have to basically dedicate the street right-of-way. It's called to the public use forever, meaning to the town. Or
Would
to the
that be
county.
100% of the owners in that subdivision? Because I assume they own to the center of that road?
Each person, each property owner, in theory, will own up to the center line of the road in front of their homes.
Right.
You have to get 100% participation.
That sounds like a whole big project right there. Like,
Well, it's not an easy process. I did the same thing. I had to do the same thing with a drainage easement in a different subdivision in a different town. That process involved maybe a dozen or more homeowners. It was a campaign. One person that lived in that area took it on himself to knock on doors, to get the documents put together, knock on doors and solicit the involvement and participation by everybody in that subdivision that was affected by it. If you had somebody in the middle of that street who refused to dedicate, you got no connectivity. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And if only half of the homeowners on one side dedicated it, you could, in theory, accept that dedication, but you're not going to be fixing the other half of that street because you can't.
That makes sense, and we
So,
really want to do
in order
that.
for
And
this-
I got to say, at least half the people, probably 80% of the people on Woodland Estates would not give it to us. And if the rest of the private roads are that way, I wouldn't be surprised.
So you can't have it both ways. If you have a private road, it's yours. And if you want the county or the city to maintain it, you have to give it away. And we could choose, I guess, would we have to stop the ownership and maintenance at 311 feet or whatever the city limit was down that road? Or could we choose to go further if they were willing to give us the entire road?
Our authority extends to our city limits.
well, most of the roads, it went to the end.
Can they restrict traffic on that private road?
It's a private road.
Yeah,
So
can
they
put
could put a
on
gate
it.
at the end of it.
Yeah.
They can put a gate on it, they can ride mopeds up
So
and
they
down
could
it.
keep
they
our
can-
future code enforcement officers from inspecting their houses.
Yes, they can. Well, code enforcement, it depends on the codes that we adopt, but in general, code enforcement officer has a right of entry, but it's limited by constitutional requirements. And so in theory, someone that wanted, a code enforcement officer that wanted to examine or inspect, they could be refused entry, but a code enforcement officer, if they had a reasonable cause to believe that some offense might be committed, could get an administrative search warrant and make entry that way. But yeah, to answer your question, simple answer, yeah, they could.
So my major concern with this is legality. Are we liable, or are we negligent? Do they have any rights for a lawsuit that says we're paying sales tax that has to be used on roads and you're not using it on our roads?
They have no, we have no liability.
No liability?
The town bears no liability.
Just as a point of order, Tara, I know on this one we are using David, but if we get past this, can we consider just releasing him? Because I don't know that he wants to hear about. We could be here a while. I mean, we break records.
Well, the
know
reason
you-
I made the first four items, because I think we need his input on this particular item as
Okay,
well, but
that's
yes.
fine. I'm in favor if it comes up to a point where we can let him go and.
That was
Could I
in
vote in
mind
favor of
when
that
I-
too? Would I be allowed to vote on that?
So I think, if I'm hearing you correctly, then if a particular private road wants to be in the town, then they need someone who can spearhead that for their road, get 100% participation, bring it to the council. With 100% participation, the council could then vote on it.
Yeah, what we would do is we would draft a form deed, a dedication deed, an easement deed, basically. We'd have a letter of explanation that described what was involved and what it
Okay.
meant. You give it to somebody to do the campaign, to walk up and down the street, knock on doors, and get everybody to sign off on the deed. But because it's a deed, everyone in the subdivision that is attached to that road needs to sign it before it's given over to the town and before we can record it. That
Okay.
makes sense?
So in 2.5 years, we've only had one citizen of Holly Creek Road request that. So I guess at this point, I think the call to action would be maybe to reach out to him and say, hey, is this what you want to do? Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, and I
I'd
think
agree.
it's based on his opening statement, which is we cannot spend public funds on private property, so
Right.
we legally can't do that. Even if we wanted to be
Right.
good people, we couldn't do it. So
Right.
if they want their road taken care of, they can deed it over to
Have to.
us, or if it's in the ETJ, to the county.
Mhm.
But there'd also be a survey, wouldn't there, David? Because there's probably not a survey of just the road.
Yeah, You need a legal description
Right.
as a part of a deed. It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal sealed survey. You just got to have a relatively accurate legal description that a third party could use.
Okay, we do have some citizens that want to speak. Patrick Smith? Okay. Shelley Smith?
Okay, should we be planning or adding roads to our task list before we plan out a repair or maintenance schedule? That's a rhetorical question, do not answer. No roads have been mentioned since the April meeting, yet we received an average of $7,000 a month for road repair from sales and use. I implore you to create a budget plan which lists which roads are in most need. Perhaps plan 10% of the road income for emergency repairs, and then set aside 90% that you can save, that you can set aside to use with a plan. Like say, for instance, once you have X amount of dollars in the bank, you fix 1/2 a mile of Poetry Road, okay? Depending on the current road building costs, this would avoid piddling all the money away on little itty-bitty or massive chuck holes, so that no major construction could ever be done. So please come up with a plan. Don't just kind of like piecemeal it along. Thank you.
Thank you. Candy Fletcher?
Private Road 2331. We live at the end of a private road, and my husband has taken care of it. He just put 65 ton of rock on it within the last few months. We don't mind taking care of our private road. It's not an issue for us. I feel like even though we do maybe pay taxes on the roads and we're not getting anything on our road, well, our road goes to roads that we use every day. So I don't feel like we're getting jolted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candy.
Thank you, Candy. All right, Herbert Fletcher. And please remember to state your name and your address. Thank you.
I forgot to do that last time. Herbert Fletcher, private road 2331. And like she said, we live on a private road, and I maintain it. It's a whittle road, what it is. I told her, you moved me here for a reason. Yeah. But I maintain the road. The neighbors pitch in for the materials. Mr. Vincent just said that he didn't know that if y'all could allocate the funds for that anyhow without having to reallocate, you voted to maintain existing roads, not additional roads. Didn't know how that would work, but anyhow, he answered my question. I don't want you owning my road. It's part of my property. I maintain it. I keep it where we can travel on it, and I figure y'all got enough problems with the roads we got.
Yes.
So I'm good with my own
Okay.
private road, and like Terry said, I can put a gate at the end of it if I don't want you down it.
Thank you, Herbert. So on his road, at least, there will not be 100%. All right, Kevin Singovich. Okay, Robin Followill. Okay. That's all our citizen comments on item number 3. I think that's been very informative. I think it makes me want to reach out to, I think his name was Nick, who came last month, and tell him, relay some of this information. Is that agreeable?
Yep,
with you?
absolutely.
Okay. All right. All right. We don't necessarily have to vote on that, right?
No.
Okay. Okay, number 4, discuss, evaluate, and take action on approved solid waste vendor accounts.
Did you want Berman for this one?
Maybe, yes. So we,
He can't be maybe here.
Secretary Teresa, at my request, came in and did this breakdown. And we have, I guess, she's been working with Councilmember Jaffe, trying to get, whenever there's a noncompliance or a late franchise fee payment, or like with the agreement, there's been this that she sent to each of you. I think you have it.
We've copied the agreements.
Well, with a copy of the agreements, but she sent this out, I believe, was it yesterday? It's kind of a synopsis. Did you get that one? It just shows where they are. Not the only ones it looks like are actually providing, that the contract requires not only the 4 times a year franchise fee payment on a quarterly basis on the 10th day after the quarter, but also a breakdown list of what addresses are being serviced. And right now, the only solid waste company that is doing that is Titan. So the other 3 are out of compliance on that. And so there is really no accountability. I mean, we're just getting their check, but we have no way to check whether that's, accurate or not. And she has tried to reach out to them, and I think Councilmember Jaffe can speak to some of this, and he's worked with quite a bit, so I'm gonna let you take it from here.
Well, I've just made myself available to her and to Tara as required to reach out to the vendors and encourage them to not just send their money in, and I think that's going pretty well these days, but also stay in compliance with their registration and stickers and insurance proving up and all of that. And so
Well, I think, so we do have, AWT is out of compliance with the contract. They haven't signed the franchise agreement, and it's expired by a long time. And just recently, we recognized that Card, Reed sold out to Card, and then Card did come in and sign, but it's also expired, but it just recently. And so, we've tried to be kind of soft on this measure. We haven't been harsh with this, but I think it's come to the point where if you have a contract that you've asked repeatedly, please come sign your contract, and it's been since November, I think that's where we have to bring it to the table here. And so, and I don't know why they haven't come to the table, and, we've sent the contract, we sent the franchise agreement, we've sent the ordinance, we've sent many notifications, but it's not happening. And so I don't know, that's why I think it needs to be brought here to discuss it.
Are we certain that the contracts are getting to them? I talked to Jason Reed yesterday, and he said 8-9 was the first contract that they had received. So him being delinquent by a month and a half was due
Now,
to our error.
Jason Reed, no. Jason Reed handles Card, and yes,
He works for Card.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
he's
is.
the
He got
regional
the,
manager.
he got the email on 8-9 from Teresa. Teresa agreed that she
Yes.
sent it on 8-9.
Yes.
But if we're negligent not send them 30 days in advance, how are we gonna?
Well, the
be mad at
Card
them
isn't
for
what
their-
I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't think Card is the issue.
Card's not the
is
issue.
AWT, and we've sent them multiple copies.
Well,
I've
they're
spoken-
highlighted just like AWT, so.
Yeah, I've spoken to them, and they assured me by dark they were gonna have it all turned in, and then again, they were gonna, and I don't know, I don't know why they're not. I've spoken to the owner, I've spoken to the lady that runs the office, and it's just odd that they're not responding. I mean, the good news is they're giving us money. The bad news is they're out of compliance in every other way, so. And they're also using the right truck, so that's a good thing.
Well,
But I guess what do we do? I mean,
Well, Mr. Berman, I guess the question is for you. It's a legal issue. What do we do? What can we do?
Revoke their permit.
I'm sorry?
Revoke their
yeah,
permit.
theoretically, we could stop them from collecting trash, but that's gonna kinda come back on us. I mean,
Well-
we're not gonna be very popular if we shut down.
But prior to that, is there some kind of a letter or official
You can always,
document we could give them?
yeah, before you revoke their
People ain't gonna see
permit,
it that
before you shut them down, you'll always give them an opportunity to fix.
Okay, well then, could we get that? Is
Absolutely.
that something you would prepare, or
If you guys want me to, yeah.
I think so. I
it'd
mean,
probably have more teeth?
we got,
Hopefully. I don't know, not everybody likes me, so I don't know.
But that'd be the next step anyway, right?
Of course it would.
Okay, well, why don't we just do that?
I think Secretary Teresa is kind of at her wit's end because she's notified them. Now, again, this is talking about AWT. She just recently recognized, again, both of us thought that Card had signed on last fall, and then she looked at it and she's like, oh my goodness. So it was on her and me. So, it escaped us. And again, having multiple vendors is difficult. It is a lot to manage. So, and we're very limited in staff. And so, as you know, so we're doing the best we can. But in AWT's instance, they have been notified numerous times, and yet they have not complied. So I think, I guess that would be the recourse here, if everyone's in agreement, that we just have the attorney send a letter. Do we have a motion for that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We have Mr. Berman prepared a letter for that effect as a first step.
Well, point of order,
Second.
are we willing to send it to everybody that, besides Titan, that's not following the full contract? I mean, not having a contract's one violation, not having the backups for us to check is another violation. So
But
they
we-
all need to be notified
What-
that
we
not in
have,
compliance with
we
the
have,
contract.
we have the contract though for everyone else, right? It's just right now, we're missing just AWT, right?
We're missing AWT, but not only are we missing it, it's been since November, and they've been notified numerous times, so it's kind of gotten blatant now. Whereas you are correct, Card just got their notification because we just recognized that it expired recently, and we just sent them the notification on August 9th.
So that one's on us.
That
But
one's
the
on
one-
us.
The one that's not on us is who we should be reaching out for. We can't punish somebody for something we did.
Right,
So-
no, and that's the point, is we have reached out multiple times to AWT with no,
So, yeah, I guess it just sounds like, at least for now, just send a letter to AWT.
Okay.
And then, if there's other issues, well, then we do that.
well,
the road.
would the council feel comfortable sending a letter? Because we haven't received the breakdown from any of the, now, I will say Texas Comptroller, he's new, and I did tell him, hey, there needs to be, a breakdown, and he said, okay, I'll do that next time. So,
Well, that's simply a list of addresses to.
right,
show
to
that they're in the
verify.
town limits, that they're collecting from the right people. That's
Right,
simply
and
for us
that's,
to check.
it's a checks and balance, and that was written into the agreement, but Titan is the only one that is in compliance with that. So my question to council is, do you feel like we should have Attorney Berman write a separate letter for those who don't have the breakdown? Okay.
I would think, just
Because
reminding.
they have been
reminding
reminded.
them of their responsibilities and that it's
Mhm.
required to operate in our town, so.
Okay.
I would send a reminder. I wouldn't send like a warning of potentially shutting off their service, their allowance.
So the council has already sent stuff, so I think it needs to go somewhere else, because we just keep sending things and they're not responding, so.
Well, yeah, and if it's gonna be a letter, it should have some teeth. And Mr. Berman, I'm sure, is very experienced in all this, so he knows how to put some teeth in it without.
I can write a really nice letter.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get ugly, but just
So,
firm.
Okay, so do we have, moving along, do we have a motion for
I have
that?
a question.
Or you have a question? Okay.
You're saying it's on us for not notifying that their contract's expired. Why is it on us?
That's
I mean, when my registration goes out on my truck, it's on me. When the inspection's out, it's on me. When my fire permit at city goes out, it's on me.
You have a valid point.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not us.
We have tried to do the courtesy of a reminder, but you're right, that's a
But
valid point.
Have they indicated they're going to fix it now that we told them, or no? I mean, I get your point, it's a good one, but do we need to waste a legal letter on card, or are they like, oh?
Now, Card, I
Thanks for
believe
reminding
that
us.
Jason Reed's been very, very agreeable, very easy to, every time that I've reached out to him, he has been very amenable, and
Yeah.
he'll take care of it.
He's a good guy.
And so I don't doubt that, but since we just notified them, and, granted, they're a lot larger operation. They have offices in Dallas, but they also have offices in Arkansas. So I get the feeling that sometimes one side doesn't know what the other is doing, but Jason is the contact for that. And so I don't have a doubt that, but they aren't providing the backup, so they need to do that.
To Councilman Blake's point, if we don't send them a contract, what are they supposed to sign? They gonna make their own contracts?
No.
I mean, I think we have to send them a contract to initiate this contract agreement. And it's
Right,
our
well, they
job
just
as a city to send it to them.
Right, but we just send them a copy of the
That's what I'm
franchise
saying. If they
agreement.
didn't receive it, I mean, if I'm a business,
But I
I
would,
mean,
right, but I would encourage him to send the ordinance and the agreement that they need to fill out and send back, along with the other thing.
I can tell you, dealing with the city of Garland, ignorance is no excuse. Not knowing, it's not a reason to not have your paperwork
Well, we're
in
open
order.
every Thursday, and they can come in and sign it any Thursday. So, to your point, but I mean, we're trying, let's work together, is my opinion, is, okay, card is not an issue. To me, I feel like that's okay, so they could have been on top of it as well. We were not on top of it as we would like to be, but we are now. We've notified them, and to me, they don't need that reminder letter from the attorney on that point. They could use the reminder, hey, we still need your checklist, just as all of them do.
Well, I think I think if people are out of compliance, we should tell them they're out of compliance.
Sure.
so.
Yeah.
So we have a motion started, but we skipped
Okay.
public. We need to do citizen.
Citizen solid waste vendors. Number 4, Robin Followill.
Robin Follow, 10658 County Road 2400. Just real quick, because I don't know the answer to this. So how many trash vendors do we actually have?
4.
We have 4 solid waste vendors, but one of them only does roll-offs.
Yeah, one of them got We had 5, but one of them got eaten up by the other ones. Now we have 4.
Okay. And one's good, and then we have one that's not, and we have 2 that aren't sending us the backup addresses that we need. Okay.
We have only one that's been doing the breakdown,
Okay.
and one is new, so.
So you're pretty much in agreement that we're gonna send them some kind of notice saying we need to get these addresses, or X, Y, and Z is gonna happen. To save the town some money, when you do this letter, is it something that you can do kind of like as a template so that they can use it going forward to the other trash vendors if they come in violation again, so that we don't have to keep paying for you to redo a letter over and over?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I'm not sure how much this letter going to cost us, about
Billions.
$750. Yeah, I mean, I do know how the pricey it can get,
Good
so
retire on that
if
one.
we can
His
do it.
letters are inexpensive compared to what we've seen in the past.
Right, but I'm just saying, if we could get that as a template, that could be something that the city
Hey, I
has.
have a
that-
file on my computer of all his stuff, so.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
So the only other thing that I would highly suggest, I know that you said we don't want to PO anybody off, but we want to make sure it's got teeth. Whatever you put in there that your action is going to be, like if you don't provide us this information or you don't sign this contract within this time frame, you'll be stick to what we're going to do, not just bluff it because we want to play nice.
Of course, honesty.
Okay.
Well, that brings up the point, does the council, if we're going to have teeth in it, what is reasonable with the council? What do you have in mind?
10 days.
10 days?
10 days, get it straightened out in 10 days.
Why don't you guys let me figure that part out?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be nice, but I'll be
We
firm.
are only open 4 hours a week on Thursdays, so with that in mind, I think 10 days might.
To the next time you're open.
I would give them
I'd
more
be
like a
okay
month.
if you cure it in 30 days.
I
mean,
would think-
come on.
I think
They're
30
a year
days would-
behind. If they do it in the next 30 days, I think we're.
I'm with Mr. Jaffe
doing
on
good.
that.
Okay, so do we have a motion for this one?
Yeah, I make a motion, we have Mr. Berman write the letters for the deficiencies with the teeth being 30 calendar days.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, seconded by Councilmember White, that we allow Attorney Berman to write a letter with the warning of 30 days on both the agreement and the deficiencies to all those who are deficient.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, and that passes unanimously.
Just for the record, Section 5 of the ordinance does have a penalty
It does.
clause, right? It says violation is $500 for each offense, and each and every day a violation occurs constitutes a separate offense. So
That's gonna be a
theoretically,
heavy
there's something in
fine.
here that says we could charge them money.
Of course there is. We could be making thousands.
Oh, my gosh, we could be wealthy, yeah.
Another
David,
revenue
go
source.
home.
So David, thank you so much for your service, and you've been most helpful, and we think we can take the next 2 items, hopefully, by ourselves.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we got it.
I think we
We can
can.
handle the newsletter.
Yes.
It's good to see you guys again. I'll
Good
see you guys
seeing
next
you.
month, yeah?
Yes,
Thank you very
sir.
much.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 5, review of the Poetry Post newsletter and take action if any changes need to occur. Okay, so this was a request, I think, by Councilmember Fowler.
It was, and we can do any of the above, but being it's mine, and for the sake of time and respect of the citizens, I'd make a motion to table it to the beginning of the next regular meeting.
Second.
The next meeting will be doing budget. Oh, it is 10 o'clock, almost 10 o'clock, isn't it?
It's not a hot topic.
It's not a hot topic?
I don't think so, I don't know.
Well, can you give us some clue what you're, so that we can, what are you
I
referring
mean-
to?
Well, we got a motion, though.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to move Poetry Post newsletter and take action item to the top of the list next meeting. All those, and it's been seconded by
It was seconded by White first.
White, okay. Okay, we have a motion by Fowler, seconded by White. All those in favor? And And that passes unanimously. I'm gonna make myself a note. Okay, moving on to item 6, discuss and take action on proposed business plan for phone and internet. Okay, so with the Spectrum having gone down, down the road in front of the town hall, it kind of seems like a no-brainer, but I wanted to bring this to the council, to, you know, just in full disclosure, that I think we had tentatively in our budget $80 a month. I think this actual cost would be August and September of the year, roughly $160, since we're just now hopefully getting that installed. So
Is Josh our expert witness on this?
Josh is our expert. He put this together. I had nothing to do
Josh,
with
can you
it.
kind of
So
walk us through this so we
yes.
understand? So I guess the good news is Spectrum is up and running in the building, or we're gonna get them, or?
Well, this is the proposal for that. The best news for the town hall, is that before we had pretty much no internet options. So having fiber out is a godsend. So
Oh my goodness, yeah.
that's great. And you should automatically pretty much approve the fiber, the internet, because you need internet for your town hall. You can eventually give it out, maybe a free service. You know, if you're in the parking lot or inside, you can have free internet if you want. So you should approve the internet. The question, I guess, for the council is what kind of PBX solution that you want to do. And PBX is pretty much how your phones are routed and hosted, and how the voicemail phone lines are handled. For our businesses, we generally do a self-hosted PBX, usually free software, usually free PBX, and it's hosted in the cloud, and it's very reliable and secure. It can handle thousands, maybe even millions of lines if you wanted to. But Spectrum offers a solution for a PBX, and the requirement is that you have to get 2 phone lines. So I think it's $19.99 the first year, and then $29.99 for the second year. The first phone line comes pretty much with the internet package. The government subsidizes it, so it's actually more expensive if you go without the phone line than it is. It's government subsidies. But I think that you guys should go with the Spectrum option. It's a lot less management on my part and future IT if it's self-hosted within the Spectrum. I'm not sure if you'll get all the exact same features I could implement with the other one, but it's going to be relatively the same. You'll get phone lines. You'll have the option to forward calls to your cell phones directly without your citizens knowing your phone number, which is a huge thing, because you can get phone calls all the time of the day from your citizens. And you'll be out voicemails and routing and text, maybe even text or voicemail to text or things like that. And you just need a PBX just because you want more than one active phone line for a secretary.
Now, but we would only have one phone number, but we would have 2 lines, so we could field as many as 2 calls.
Theoretically, with the PBX, you could have 1,000.
But you're suggesting we buy 2, right? We get one free,
Yes.
and then we buy one.
Yes. And the self-hosted option is probably cheaper in the long run, but it's a lot of work for an IT manager.
Yeah, we don't want to take on stuff, we got to do things we're not
Yeah.
set up for that right now.
I use this system at work. It's great when it's up until it's not, which happens occasionally, and then you
That all
don't have
technology.
internet, you don't have phone. But somebody cuts a line somewhere, it just happens.
Currently,
I know,
we
but if
don't
we
have
can-
a phone either, and it's.
Yeah, and as soon as you get the
cell phone.
internet, at the town hall, and we're there, we can stream this whole thing online. So
That would be
I know some
advantageous.
requests have definitely been made for streaming this, and the church still doesn't have Spectrum yet, although they have told me they will. But as soon as we get it at our town hall, we can stream, and that'll make some people happy. So
So to your point, Jonathan, I guess our option on the phone is we could get a landline. I mean, they still have those, but I don't know, they're pretty.
Do the Spectrum. I'd do the Spectrum.
Well, I do
landlines
too.
are.
I think it's better than fixed wireless.
Yeah,
You know, it's-
absolutely. Fiber is the best you can get.
Most
You-
reliable.
If you can get fiber, go with fiber.
I know, what, a year ago, we were looking at the tower, and
Yeah, a year ago, we were looking at a tower for internet at the
With
town
very
hall.
low
Yeah.
speeds.
Yeah, I mean, compared to fiber, it's 500 times faster.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's crazy.
so, okay, well, thank you so much. And we have a citizen, Brian Vinson.
Can I ask Josh a question real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't understand anything IT.
Okay.
That's it to me. So, does the phone work off the fiber?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's not Wi-Fi.
So the old gateway system, or how phone lines used to route things, no longer really applies. Pretty much everyone's switched to VoIP. That's what that is, pretty much, a VoIP phone. But AT&T charges for one phone line like $70, $80 for one phone line these days. That's pretty much going the way of the dodo. So VoIP is the future, and VoIP is what everyone's moving forward to.
Additionally, I mean, that's what we have at the feed store.
Yes.
And so it's been fairly reliable, but like
If your internet goes out, your phone line
Jonathan
goes out.
said, I mean, you don't have phone line if your internet is out.
But we're not supporting a 911 system, so.
Okay, so 911 is complicated.
Well, I'm saying we're not calling the fire department on
No, that's right.
the landline, so
No.
it's not.
No,
We're a
yeah.
part of the
It's not that-
E911.
If you were doing something like that, you would have to have backups.
Backup generator.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Josh.
Perfect.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, Brian Vinson.
Okay.
He's
another phone
also,
expert.
he's
We're gonna be
another
overwhelmed.
techie expert.
Brian
so-
Vincent, 5937 County Road 323. I didn't want you guys to think I was going to get up here just to gripe. The phone proposal seems like a reasonable proposal. I used to sell a competing system to Ring Central, and Ring Central is the underlying infrastructure that Spectrum uses. So I'm familiar with the technology, and this is a good fit for this use. The only counsel I have is you may want to circle back with Spectrum and see if you can get a better deal with internet plus mobile phones instead of internet plus their VoIP phones. VoIP is voice over internet protocol. So you might want to see if you can get a better deal, but I think if Josh has looked into this, it's probably a solid deal as it is. We definitely don't need a receptionist console. We're not going to have enough lines for that. So the Poly VXX240 phone should be fine. They have a 4-line capability, and we're only going to have 2, so we're good. And to save a little money, you may want to look into a soft phone client, and that's a little app you install on your computer. It acts like the phone rather than having a hard phone on your desk. Takes a little getting used to, but at Harley-Davidson, on my agents, they did it fine. They were good with it. But sometimes you could even install those apps on your cell phone, so you can have a phone and a phone, you know. And with the PBX, as Josh was saying, you know, there's multiple lines that are coming in and out. You could also probably have a forward to each of you guys' cell phones if you wanted that, as long as there weren't more than 2 lines being used at the same time. But anyway, all in all, this is a good proposal, and I like to see it. Thanks.
Thanks,
We'll have
Brian.
you on call duty. You can be on call the first week, and then
Robin Followell.
Robin Follow 10658 County Road 2400. Okay, so I found that very interesting for the fact that I didn't know that Josh was the city's IT person. So if you get locked out of your email or anything and you need password access, you have to call Josh, correct?
I don't know.
I mean, to gain access again if you're locked out and he's the IT person.
Face would have to get burned off because I have the face deal, but I
yeah, I guess
call.
theoretically,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Since he gave us our passwords and then we immediately changed them, we haven't done anything with it. But yeah,
I just find that very interesting that nobody else sees
No, I
there's
trust.
a conflict of
I don't.
interest on that, because
I
that was
mean,
something
I
I
could see
didn't.
why you'd say that.
didn't
I'm going
know.
to defend Josh and say he's a very honest guy, and I trust him implicitly.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not honest. I'm just saying it's,
looks funny.
it does, thank you. Looks
That
funny.
point has been made in the past, but.
It's a valid point.
Yep, okay. All right, so we are talking about the phone, so it looks like, if I hear you correctly, the Spectrum is, I think, week ago. So item 1 or 2 is kind of the decision there.
Yeah, we gotta pick a phone, right?
Pick a phone. So there is, I think he has this, there's a,
Brian said get the cheap one, right?
Do we have money in the budget to make these purchases?
we do. We have $900 to buy equipment for this purpose. So I kind of, I mean, I like simple, but,
Yeah, because we could put others on
The-
computers and other things we need.
The 450?
the 450 premium, is that, it's kind of,
But you were
Oh,
saying.
buy two.
Yeah,
and to buy 2 of these. So the standard handset, does it, what are its capabilities? Do you know?
That's more of my purview in probably choosing the right
Okay.
for the secretary, to make suggestions, but
So it might be the secretary's preference.
Yeah, or
And give her a choice, perhaps. Okay.
Her choice on the model of phone?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, she doesn't need the massive one, that's like for a switchboard. We're not gonna, there are no extensions, she's the only one.
Right, I think item 1 or 2, the first or second one.
Yeah, 1 or 2.
Yeah, I don't see that we
What
would
is-
need the others.
What is 2, even 2 is like for lots of lines. Yeah, we'll do 4 lines, we're gonna have 2.
Yeah. But to Josh's point, we need to buy 2 phones.
Yeah, that's fine, 2 cheap ones.
So let's just
Yeah.
get 2 of the VXRW, I don't know if that's
VVX.
VVX
250s.
250s,
And,
2 of them.
and that should meet our needs at this point.
2 phone lines and internet. And then, Josh, I guess you brought us in at 600 down, 25 up, is that?
yes, some reason that was the cheaper one, I don't know what the substitute.
Well, for residential, they have 300, 600 gig.
Yes.
But the 300 and 600 aren't symmetric. They're very low.
They're gonna be
300 is like,
symmetric next year.
yes. Yeah, the 300 is like 20 up and 600 is like 30 or 40 up or something.
I can check again with the sales guy. Maybe he was quoting me just the 600 because he was trying to upsell me, but I'll check on that. Right now, I think 10 baseline is what we need for streaming.
Well, if we're gonna do streaming, 25 wouldn't be bad if we're gonna do a high-quality stream, so. And also be looking stuff up and answering phone calls, whatever.
10's a good baseline for streaming, so 10's the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think 25 is decent.
600 down, 25 up.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And you can, on the fly, you can up or down your package. I mean, you can, it takes 1 hour. So from the time you say upsize me or downsize me, 1 hour.
Okay, nice.
So it's real quick.
Okay, so does council have a motion on either 1 or 2?
I think Mike should make
Mike,
it.
I suggest you make this motion.
Well, what, I
It's
mean,
all
what am
Greek
I?
to me.
Okay, so I make a motion, we secure Spectrum Business, 600 meg down, 25 up, internet, plus 2 phone lines through their PBX product, and that we purchase 2 of the VBX 250 handsets.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Jaffe, seconded by Councilmember Blake, for what he just said. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously.
Have they told us, is the install available now? Everything's done down there?
I talked to him 6 months ago about this.
Okay. Well, I know I'm on their install list, but they ran out of fiber, so they can't like hook up any houses right now.
Yeah, they're down, they've been down that one for a couple months.
Okay.
Yeah. Which has been quite timely. Okay, so we are now at general comments. Okay, so it looks like some people have left. Patrick Smith, he's gone. Chad McFarland wasn't here. Brian Benson.
Good evening, Brian Vinson, 5937 County Road 323. I assure you this is the last time I'll come up this evening to talk. So I'm taking this opportunity to ask the governing body to consider amending the rules of decorum to allow for citizens to speak to this body without having to disclose their personal information in a public arena. Since these meetings are open to the public and anyone can address the governing body, I don't understand the need to have the address of the speaker spoken aloud. It's already on the sign-up sheet. However, if that information should be needed, it can be added, it is on the sign-up sheet, and it can be acquired from public disclosure. It is true that the sign-up sheet can be acquired via a public information request, but that would still be preferable to require a person to divulge to their name and address and them having that information posted to the internet where it can literally be obtained by anyone globally. In addition to personal preference for privacy, there may be legal restrictions. Texas Title 11B, Section 521.001 includes a person's name and address as personal identifying information. Section 521.052 defines a duty to protect such information, and though it explicitly defines this as a business requirement, other Title 11 requirements specifically exempt government entities. Section 521 does not, which suggests that it applies to government entities. Regardless of the legal requirements, I think it is poor policy to broadcast personal identifying information to the world, regardless of how many people in third world countries have the information. I hope the town will do better for its citizens.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
My understanding that it was a legal state requirement, but we can check into that. All right, Robin Bowles is gone. I'm sorry, that was Robin Bowles. That's Jack Sinkovich? No? Okay. Kevin Sinkovich? Pass. Okay. And Robin Followill.
Robin Follow 10658 County Road 2400. The only other thing that I would like to comment on is the zoning ordinance that y'all reviewed, discussed tonight. I think you should honestly just keep the name of it as zoning ordinance. It's pretty standard. That's what towns do, small and big. It's not, I know you're wanting the minimum to make it seem like it's small, but we still, as a small town, want to be respected and professional and all of that. So keeping it standard as zoning ordinance like other cities have it is what it really should be called. When you read it, you find out it's minimum. Just putting it on that in front of it just doesn't make it really minimum. It just makes it seem like to other cities that, oh, they're a little town, they didn't know that you just put zoning ordinance. So, I mean, I just think it's more reputable if we keep it standard, and that's how we do that. I'm looking forward to future meetings with us discussing it. I'm definitely gonna do some more research to bring back to you. I'm probably gonna also have someone from the actual state that does code, not lawyer, code, that might help y'all. It's not gonna be anything that costs you anything. This is something I'm going out on the limb doing so that maybe some people will finally listen to the actual state code and things you do have to do even if you are a small town.
Okay, thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, that is the end of our comments, general comments. The time is now 10:19. Meeting adjourned.